Chapter 5041. According to this old man's Magus father, the previous Magus king, when he first used the divine connection spell, he already knew that this old man was going to be born in the northwest of the Magus king stronghold. Thus, before this old man was born, he had already sent the Magi of the Magus king's stronghold to patrol the northwest, searching every inch of land for traces of this old man. When they found this old man's tracks, they didn't waste any time and sent me here within 100 days. Of course, this old man has never left this place since then. Xiao Hua furrowed his brows. He looked at the golden dragon scales on the Shaman King's waist and asked curiously, "Then, what about the first time Senior performed the God-linking technique?" When I performed the God-linking technique for the first time, I received two completely different messages. The Shaman King seemed to be recalling something, but he said in a hurry. One was that the new Shaman King was going to be born in Shaman King's stronghold, and the other message was that the new Shaman King was not going to be born in Meng Mountains. At that time, I was struck dumb, as these two messages were obviously different. That was why I thought my God-linking technique had failed. After all, the Shaman King was blessed by the 12 gods, and it was rare for him to fail in his God-linking technique. However, when I performed the God-linking technique for the first time, and for the sake of finding a new Shaman King, I failed miserably. That really made me disheartened. What happened after that? Xiao Hua asked with great interest. To tell you the truth, Reverend, the Shaman King answered. After that, I didn't dare to use the God-linking technique to find a new Shaman King. Instead, I use it in other places. When my God-linking technique had reached a certain level, and I was able to successfully judge most of the ordinary things, only then did I perform it for the second time. The second time I performed, it was a success, and it showed that the new Shaman King of Meng Mountains would be born in the vicinity of Hutu's stronghold. Only then did I let out a sigh of relief. However, when the Shaman King appeared, I still couldn't see it. Could it be? Xiao Hua thought for a moment, then blurted out, "Senior only got the real time after this junior appeared." The Shaman King gave Xiao Hua a meaningful glance, nodded, and said, "What Taoist said is right." That day, the reason I unleashed the divine connection technique was for the sake of the lives of millions of people in Meng Mountains. But I could sense that Reverend is in Hutu's stronghold, and that he is destined to be a soul cultivator. Therefore, I asked Jinji to return at top speed and hand the Grand Magus King's medallion to Reverend. I hope Reverend will have a chance to visit Magus King's stronghold, so I can thank Reverend in person. But after Jinji left, Wu Grandmasters of Zhuwu Village also left. I suddenly thought of the new Magus King who would appear in Huda Village in the future, so I performed the God-connecting magic again. Senior, I'm afraid it's not good for your shaman body to continuously use the God-connecting technique. Xiao Hua hit the nail on the head. Sigh indeed. The Shaman King lowered his head to look at his shaman body and said helplessly, "Logically speaking, this shaman body of mine was born from the shaman body and possesses the karmic luck of a soul cultivator. But after being suppressed for so many years, I actually sense a decline. Shaman body is shaman body, and soul body is soul body. The primordial shaman arts have been lost, so it would be strange if Senior's shaman body didn't decline." Xiao Hua said, then raised his head to look at the sky. Is this the plan of the Buddhist kingdom? Perhaps the next Shaman King won't live for so long. Speaking of the next Shaman King, Xiao Hua's heart trembled. He could ignore the previous Shaman King, and he could also ignore the current Shaman King, but the future Shaman King was his descendant. So, Xiao Hua couldn't ignore it anymore. All of a sudden, Xiao Hua had a feeling that he had boarded a pirate ship. Taoist, let's get back to the topic. The Shaman King was afraid that if he said too much, it would arouse Xiao Hua's disgust. So he quickly changed the topic and said, "When I performed the God-connecting magic for the second time for the new Shaman King, I suddenly realized that the new Shaman King would be born within 1,000 years, and the location was actually back to Wushan Ridge. This time, I was both surprised and happy, and I hurriedly made all the preparations to welcome the new Shaman King. However, 100 years ago, my soul body issued an order in the Shaman King's stronghold, and half of the Shaman Kings were in the vicinity of Wushan Ridge looking for traces of the new Shaman King. The Shaman King continued, "Of course, 100 years was a bit too early, but the Shaman Kings didn't find any useful information. Moreover, this information was extremely contradictory with the earlier information from Hoda's stronghold, so I doubted that this information was correct. Then, 10 years ago, I performed the God-connecting magic again, and I actually discovered that the birth of the new Shaman King was imminent. But the location changed again, and it was actually near the space suppression. Moreover, Hotu's stronghold also faintly appeared. I suddenly understood that the birth of the new Shaman King was different from the ordinary Shaman Kings, and he should have been born long ago, and he might even be a person with great magical powers. His location was not confirmed, and this person might be related to Hotu's stronghold. Therefore, I hurriedly searched for the soul warriors of Hotu's stronghold and asked the shaman elders and G-Man of Hotu's stronghold to come to Wushan Ridge. When I met Jianji and Ziming, I discovered that G-Man of Hotu's stronghold had been changed long ago, and I asked Jianji for a long time, but I didn't find anything. Jianji had important matters to attend to in Wushan Ridge, so I left Ziming alone in Wushan Ridge. However, a few years ago, I sensed something again, so I negotiated with the Array Spirit and sent Ziming into the space suppression, and he stayed there until today. When you arrived at the Buddhist formation, the Shaman King's token was activated by you, and I was also very surprised, because the Shaman King's token can't be activated so easily, and I sensed it through the Buddhist formation. I suddenly thought of the new Shaman King, and I thought that you were the new Shaman King, so I immediately activated my soul power to bring you down from the sea of bitterness. But when I was halfway there, I was stopped by the Array Spirit with the Buddhist formation, and after a brief moment, Ziming disappeared as well. When you and Ziming reappeared, I finally understood that if you weren't the new Shaman King, then you and Ziming's offspring would be the new Shaman King. In other words, when I first used the God conjuring technique, I was half right. Since my God conjuring technique wasn't completely wrong then, why is the new Shaman King not born in Million Meng Mountains? Before you woke up, I hurriedly used the God conjuring technique again, and I finally realized that my God conjuring technique wasn't wrong. The new Shaman King is really not born in Million Meng Mountains, and not even in Dawn Rain Continent. Xiao Hua was startled, and he blurted out, "If it's not born here, then where? Is this the reason why you took out the newborn from Ziming's body?" "That's right." The Shaman King nodded his head solemnly, still transmitting his voice. "That's right. I've thought it through. All the generations of Shaman Kings of Million Meng Mountains have been suppressed in this Buddhist formation, and they have never left this place. It's not only the sorrow of life, but also the sorrow of soul cultivators. If we don't change, and let the Buddhist formation suppress us generation after generation, the inheritance of Million Meng Mountains will definitely be destroyed. Therefore, I must not let the new Shaman King be born in this Buddhist formation." Of course, I didn't think too much about where the new Shaman King would be born, but since you came from Yilin Continent, I thought, if possible, I'll use my soul cultivation secret technique and let the Shaman King be born in Yilin Continent. This is also the reason why I asked you about the situation in Yilin Continent. "Damn it," Xiao Hua cursed in a low voice. "If that's the case, just let me take Ziming away." Does Reverend have the confidence to take Ziming away under the protection of the formation spirit? The Shaman King smiled faintly, not angered by Xiao Hua's cursing. "Isn't it possible now?" Xiao Hua frowned. "But after leaving this place, can Ziming give birth to a new Shaman King for Million Meng Mountains?" The Shaman King asked again. Xiao Hua was speechless. "When I'm looking for the next Shaman King, I didn't hide it from the formation spirit. However, this formation spirit has no humanity and doesn't know that it has indirectly contributed to the birth of the Shaman King. But the formation spirit knows that the new Shaman King has already appeared, and it won't let Ziming, who is pregnant with the Shaman King, leave this place. the Shaman King explained. Only by taking the new Shaman King out of Ziming's body will Ziming be able to leave this place. Otherwise, Ziming can only leave after the new Shaman King is pregnant for 10 months. Xiaohua suddenly felt powerless. He was already a human Mahayana cultivator with 10th grade elemental energy and could even ascend to immortality at any time. It seemed like his fate was in his hands, but in reality, how much could he do? Facing so many strong people in the world, he was still an ant. Even if it was an inhumane formation spirit, he didn't have any power to resist, because the formation spirit relied on Mount Meru and the 3,000 great worlds. It was the power of the Buddhist nation, the will of the Buddhist nation, even if one of his clones was already the Maitreya Buddha. Looking at the dragon scale on the waist of the Shaman King, Xiaohua clearly knew that the new Shaman King was inside the dragon scale, and that was his son. Although the appearance of this son was a beautiful mistake, it was still his son. A new life, a new hope, a new beginning. But facing this new life, he definitely didn't have the ability to decide his future. Whether it was in the hands of the Shaman King or under the suppression of the formation spirit, he couldn't even do anything for his future. Becoming the Shaman King was his destiny, and bearing the inheritance of millions of Meng Mountains was also his destiny. It was as if before he was even born, an extremely difficult path had already appeared in front of him. The hope of millions of people in Meng Mountains and Wuming Mountain Range was already on his shoulders. Xiaohua's mouth was filled with bitterness. After a while, Xiaohua asked faintly, "If that's the case, what else does Senior want to discuss with me?" P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it, Qidian. Vote for it. Vote for it. Give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Chapter 5042. Reverend is the source of the new Shaman King's bloodline. Although I don't know why the Shaman God arranged this, but the Shaman King said earnestly, "Since it's already like this, I can't not tell Reverend clearly. This is the arrangement of fate's hands, and I need Reverend's consent. I hope Reverend won't have any resentment in your heart." Speaking of resentment, it's not that bad. Xiaohua shook his head and said, "But it's impossible for me to not think about it. As Senior said, since it's already like this and the million Meng Mountains really need a new Shaman King, then I can only agree." "All right." Hearing this, the Shaman King bowed and said, "I thank Reverend on behalf of the 12 great gods and the million people of Meng Mountains." The Shaman King was an unknown great god, so how could Xiaohua dare to let the Shaman King bow? He quickly returned the bow and said, "I don't dare. I also understand soul cultivation. This is something I should sacrifice." The Shaman King stood up, looked up in a panic, and said, "After saying so much, it's finally time to discuss with Reverend." "Oh, what do you need me to do?" Xiaohua was a bit stunned because the Shaman King didn't send him a voice transmission, but spoke in front of Ziming. "Senior, please say it." Ziming obviously knew that the Shaman King was discussing something important with Xiaohua. Previously, he only lowered his head, but now, after hearing the Shaman King's words, he raised his head and looked at the Shaman King blankly. The Shaman King looked at Xiaohua, then looked at Ziming and said kindly, "As a father and mother, I naturally have to give my child a name." Ziming jumped, his face flushed red. Xiaohua was also a bit awkward. He thought for a while and asked, "Is it a pet name or a shaman name?" Reverend actually knows a shaman name. The Shaman King was a bit stunned. Xiaohua nodded. "I still know a lot. Senior will understand in the future." "Oh." The Shaman King was stunned. After thinking for a while, he nodded and said, "I originally wanted you to give him a pet name, but since Reverend said so, then let's just give him a shaman name." Xiaohua seemed to already have a plan. He said seriously, "Senior's life is sorrowful. Since birth, you were suppressed, you got the shaman name Wei, which means time flies." Meanwhile, the new Shaman King would push aside the sun and the moon to see a new life and create a vast world. Thus, it could be said to be bright. The word light also implies that the soul cultivator's legacy is withered and disorderly. But when the shackles are broken, the path of soul cultivator will be bright and broad. Great! The Shaman King was overjoyed when he heard that. He clapped his hands and said, Jinren, this shaman name is excellent. This old man is ashamed of his inferiority. The next Shaman King will be named Ming. Thank you for the name, young master. Ming was also overjoyed. After all, there was a Ming in her name. Xiaohua, naming her like this, was to commemorate Ming. Ming originally didn't care about her sacrifice, but now she was even more grateful. The Shaman King did not wait for Ming to finish speaking and hurriedly sent a voice transmission to urge him. Spiritual Master, do you have any other instructions? Or is there anything else you want to leave for the new Shaman King? Can I? Xiaohua was slightly taken aback. Aren't you sending him into reincarnation? The Shaman King didn't have time to explain and only transmitted his voice. You can stay here or in the Hutu stronghold. However, following him into reincarnation has a different meaning. After all, it can be counted as a keepsake. As for whether the things you leave behind can follow him, I don't know. I just want to remind Spiritual Master that you have this choice. There were countless treasures in Xiaohua's space. He wished he could leave everything to his descendants. Unfortunately, the space couldn't be opened now. Xiaohua had nothing on him except for the magic treasures he prepared for himself. However, Xiaohua still reached into his bosom and pulled out 2 items. One was a milky white jade bottle without any writing on it. Xiaohua glanced at it and knew that it was some spirit awakening fluid. It was refined by him in the hidden immortal continent for the descendants of the Zheng family in Fancheng County of Shuzhou's Fengxiang country. It might have been inadvertently taken out of the space when he was refining his magic treasure. However, since it was inadvertent, Xiaohua's heart was moved again. He looked at the jade bottle meaningfully and raised his hand to urge his soul power to write the word Xiao on the bottom of the jade bottle. This word seemed simple, but every stroke was formed by a green seal character. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to understand it. The other thing in Xiaohua's hand was a spirit storage bag. It was the winged sky strange beast that Xiaohua obtained in the auction house in Tong Lake City. That day, he was in a hurry and under the watchful eyes of everyone. Xiaohua took the spirit storage bag and put it in his chest, ignoring it. Xiaohua looked at these 2 things and didn't hesitate. He immediately handed them to the Shaman King and said, This junior doesn't have anything else on him. I'm afraid I only have these 2 things. I don't know if they're suitable. The Shaman King asked about the origin of the 2 things and said with a bitter smile, This old man just wants a keepsake or something like that. If this pill, elixir, and soul beast goes through reincarnation, I'm afraid there will be some changes. Then forget it. Xiaohua heard and hurriedly withdrew his hand. The Shaman King was the same as Xiaohua. His heart was moved, and he reached out to take the 2 things. He said with a smile, Since Spiritual Master doesn't have anything else on him, you can still take these 2 things out. Maybe there is some meaning behind it. Then this old man will clearly thank Spiritual Master. As he spoke, the Shaman King put the pill, elixir, and the spirit storage bag into the dragon scale. He then looked up and said, There isn't much time left. This old man will send you out now. You can wait outside for a day. If Ming doesn't go out, then you don't have to wait anymore. Why? Xiaohua was anxious and couldn't help but blurt out. This question was extremely stupid, but in Ming's ears, it was abnormally sweet. Ming got up and walked in front of Xiaohua. He stared at Xiaohua for a moment, then opened his arms and hugged Xiaohua willingly. He whispered in his ear, Forever, forever. Xiaohua's heart ached. He knew what Ming meant by these 2 words. Moreover, he also understood that Ming probably wouldn't be able to walk out of this space of suppression. After Ming let go of Xiaohua, the Shaman King looked at the flame that had already appeared above his head and said in a low voice, This old man will send you to the foothills of the Hutu stronghold. You just wait there. Senior. Xiaohua looked at Ming's satisfied expression and hurriedly asked the Shaman King, Can this junior come here again in the future? If you want to, you can go to the Shaman King stronghold to find this old man's soul body. The Shaman King was also very satisfied with Xiao Hua's affection and righteousness. He smiled and said, "When Taoist sees the soul body, this old man will know." Of course, if the new Shaman King is really a Shaman King, then the new Shaman King has already inherited the luck of my soul cultivator. As the source of the bloodline, Taoists should also be able to sense the existence of this space. If the formation spirit doesn't stop you, you should be able to directly come here. Okay, this junior understands. Xiao Huan nodded solemnly and said word by word, "If this junior comes again, I will definitely give senior a pleasant surprise." This old man has never been so surprised in this life. The Shaman King smiled and said, "I hope Taoist's next surprise will be even greater than today's." Of course, senior, please rest assured. Xiao Hua didn't dare to say anything about the soul cultivator's inheritance under the suppression of the Buddhist formation. He only said vaguely, "Senior can send this junior out now." As he spoke, Xiao Hua walked to the side with large strides and grabbed Ji Yu and Yi Yun in each hand. Okay, the Shaman King also didn't dare to be negligent. He agreed and opened his mouth again, spitting out another mouthful of blood essence. Just like before, the green seal text was activated and a several feet long dark green crack was strangely torn open in the void. At this moment, wong wong, a rumbling sound descended from the sky. More than 10 balls of flame transformed into the image of the ferocious Buddhist protector and also fell into the void crack. The entire void crack trembled and slowly shrank. This old man wants to send Taoist Xiao out. Could it be that you want to stop me? The Shaman King asked with a smile. Sure. What the hell were you doing just now? The formation spirit's voice sounded exactly the same as the Shaman King's, almost indistinguishable. The Shaman King smiled and said, "Nothing. I was thinking of giving a name to my newly born human nature." "Oh, right, don't you know? Everyone in my human race has a name. For example, I am called Sure. You don't seem to have a name yet. Do you want me to give you a name?" "Oh, what do you think is a good name for me?" Obviously, the formation spirit was attracted by the name. Although the suppressing force didn't decrease, the dozens of balls of flame had disappeared, and the void crack had stabilized. Xiao Hua didn't hesitate. Carrying a man and a woman whose body was constantly rippling, he stepped into the void crack with steady steps. When the suppressing force of the formation spirit disappeared, he didn't hesitate to activate the art of going south, going north, teleporting toward millions of Meng mountains. This was the flying, colorful phoenix that broke the jade cage, the flood dragon that broke the golden lock, and the suppression of Mount Sumeru. Even if he met the formation spirit again in millions of Meng mountains, Xiao Hua had absolute confidence that he could beat it black and blue and teach it how to write the word human nature. Going south, going north. The Shaman King naturally paid attention to Xiao Hua's departure. When he saw Xiao Hua using the art of going south, going north, going south, going north, he couldn't help but cry out in his mind, as if he understood Xiao Hua's vague reminder. The Shaman King casually said a few more words to the formation spirit. After making up a few names that the formation spirit was extremely dissatisfied with, he smiled and said, "The man has left, so the woman should leave as well. Right? Let this old man send this girl away, then I'll think of a good name for you." No. The figure of the formation spirit appeared from the flame, looking exactly the same as the Shaman King. It shook its head and said, "If the new Shaman King doesn't appear, none of you can leave?" "Strange," the Shaman King said in disbelief. "This matter has nothing to do with this girl. Why don't you let her go?" "Oh, didn't you let that girl go earlier?" P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, bookmark, tip, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 5043. There was no expression on the array spirit's face, but it was somewhat surprised. It asked, "That girl has nothing to do with the new Shaman King. Why don't you let her go?" The Shaman King was flustered and exasperated. "But this girl has nothing to do with the new Shaman King. How can it have nothing to do with her?" The erased spirit was even more confused. If it has nothing to do with her, then why did you let her wait here for 10 years? Who is the new Shaman King? Why don't I know? The Shaman King rolled his eyes and asked curiously. Humph. The erased spirit sneered. It looked at the Shaman King's waist and said, I don't know anything else, but the new Shaman King has appeared. This matter, I know it better than anyone. He was born to be suppressed by me. The Shaman King was helpless. He knew the erased spirit very well. At the same time, he knew that he couldn't be compared to Jiuxia's glib tongue. Jiuxia could persuade the erased spirit to let her go, but he couldn't. However, he was prepared for the worst-case scenario. He argued with the erased spirit for a full hour before looking at Ziming apologetically. Child, I've wronged you. Ziming smiled sweetly and said, Shaman King, what are you saying? Previously, I didn't know and thought that you were in the Shaman King stronghold. Only when I came here did I understand that you have been suppressed here for the sake of my soul cultivation inheritance. The grievances you have suffered, I can't even compare to 1/10,000th of it. Besides, since I have to bear an undeserved reputation, how can I not pay some price? That's good. The Shaman King nodded. He looked at the direction of the space where the Hutu stronghold was and said in a low voice, If you don't go out, Daoist Xiao. It'll be easier to deal with him. Ziming's face was slightly red, but there was some regret in her eyes. She knew that if she didn't go back, Xiao Hua might not mention the new Shaman King to the Shaman Elder. However, if she didn't hear Xiao Hua admitted in front of the Shaman Elder, she was somewhat unwilling in her heart. A woman's heart, as strong as the Shaman King, still couldn't completely understand it. After arguing for a long time, the erased spirit seemed to be tired. Its figure flashed and disappeared. It was unknown whether it was pondering human nature or pondering a new name. The Shaman King also seemed to be tired. He stood there like a statue and didn't move for half a day. Ziming had already stayed in this space for 10 years, so he was naturally familiar with it. He circulated his soul force and quietly cultivated. Time passed slowly. It was unknown when the Shaman King woke up. That dragon tail began to slightly sway at the bottom of the space. Strands of dim light rose like ripples on the millstone seal. Ziming opened her eyes and sensed strands of the aura of the Netherblood Sea. She was a little surprised, but she didn't ask anything. She took a few glances and closed her eyes again. Ziming had originally thought that the Shaman King was planning something and had casually swung his dragon tail. But who would have thought that this casual action of the Shaman King would go on for 10 whole days? Seeing that the aura of the Netherblood Sea was getting thicker and thicker, even the formation spirit revealed itself. Looking at the whirlpool that was already dozens of feet in size, it asked curiously, What are you doing? What? Venerable Wu rolled his eyes at Formation Spirit and said coldly, I want to see how you intercepted my Sorcerer King token that day. Logically speaking, the nether energy of my soul cultivation is thicker than the aura of the sea of bitterness of the Buddhist kingdom. How could it be intercepted by you? Ha! Formation Spirit laughed. The nether blood sea of millions of Meng mountains was suppressed by my sea of bitterness. How could your Sorcerer King token surpass the 18 levels of hell? You'd better not think blindly. No. Venerable Wu shook his head firmly. I must find a way to restrain the sea of bitterness. TSK. Formation Spirit curled its lips and said, How dare you call yourself an old man in front of me? I don't know how much older I am than you. Venerable Wu glared at Formation Spirit and didn't say anything else. His dragon tail was still swinging, and his eyebrows were tightly knitted, as if he was really thinking hard. Boring. Formation Spirit looked at Venerable Wu and muttered, then said to Ziming, Ziming, what do you think my name should be? Ziming thought for a moment, then said seriously, All names are given by their parents. If you want a name, you can ask your parents. Why are you asking me? Parents? Formation Spirit was stunned and asked curiously, Who are my parents? I don't know. Even you don't know. How could I know? Ziming asked again. Then she rolled her eyes and said with a smile, Of course, if you want me to help you, let me out first. I'll go to millions of Meng mountains to help you find. Tisk, do you think I'm stupid? Formation's spirit sneered. You can't leave until you see the new Sorcerer King. It doesn't matter. Ziming shrugged and said, My parents know I'm here anyway. I'll go back and find them later. Where are my parents? Formation's spirit seemed to be crying, but the expression on her face was still as cold as ice. As he shouted, the Array's spirit disappeared again. He was afraid that he had really gone to find his parents. The Shaman King raised his eyebrows. Suddenly, the golden dragon scale on his waist silently fell into the whirlpool. Seeing the dragon scale fall, the Shaman King spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood essence into it and activated the green seal text again. Buzz, buzz. A strange sound was heard. Gradually, pitch-black lotus petals that looked like netherworld lotuses appeared out of thin air. Death, what are you doing? Formation's spirit suddenly appeared and looked at the black lotus petals in disbelief. She exclaimed, You actually interfered with reincarnation. Don't you want to live anymore? Not good. The new Sorcerer King. Boom! Amidst the flames, a layer of the sea of bitterness fell from the sky and smashed onto the petals of the nether lotus. Whoosh! Rays of Buddhist light that were like wheels appeared. Within the Buddhist light, dragon scales were revealed, and the 9 layers of brilliance within the dragon scales were also revealed. Layers of vitality were covered by the Buddhist light. Damn it! Seeing this, the Shaman King couldn't help but curse. The strange green light around his body condensed into a huge green seal script. This green seal script let out an obscure sound, and a huge hurricane-like force was generated out of nowhere. The moment this force appeared, the entire sealed space shook. The space was folded into thousands of layers, and each layer revealed the light shadows of the 12 great gods. Each layer revealed the endless Wuming mountain range. However, before this force could land on the Buddha's light, the shadow of Mount Sumeru appeared with a boom and fell down as if it was real. Wherever it went, the space was flattened, the light and shadow were shattered, and the endless mountain range was also cut off. Roar! Seeing that he was about to fail, the Sorcerer King roared unwillingly. Woo! A strange whistling sound of wind came from the flat space. Amidst the twisting light and shadow, a tall and sturdy, extraordinarily handsome young man stepped out of the light and shadow. As soon as this young man appeared, the Shaman King's body expanded with a boom. As if he was splitting the sky and splitting the earth, he directly opened up the space. Even Mount Meru was lifted up. The roar of heaven and earth was loud. Swish! In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, a blood shadow covered in dark green, heavenly patterns flew out from the human-faced dragon tail and entered the young man's body. Rumbling sounds of thunder emerged from the young man's body, and then he turned into a light shadow and rushed into the rotating wheel. Sure, what are you doing? The spirit of the Array shouted angrily. This is human nature. The young man turned his head slightly. His eyebrows revealed unparalleled tenacity. His thin lips opened and said, This is something you will never understand in this lifetime. Along with his voice, boom, the young man's soul shattered and turned into thousands of ripple-like soul strands. These soul strands tore apart the wheel condensed from Buddha's light and blocked the previous vortex. The thousands of soul strands were like boiling water, extremely tumbling. Everything happened in a flash. Ziming didn't have any reaction at all. Under the huge force, she was even pushed to the edge of the space. However, this didn't stop her from staring at the tumbling soul strands. Over there, Ziming's familiar aura of Hood to God was rapidly fading away. The Sorcerer King's heroic voice came from inside. Ha! This old man understands. The new Sorcerer King Ming was indeed born here. But he wasn't born here, nor was he born in Xiaoyu Continent. Even more so, he won't be born in Yilin Continent. As for where he transmigrated into a human body, that will depend on the grace of Hood to God. Looks like this old man didn't make a mistake when he used the divine connection technique for the first time. Damn it, the erased spirit was actually angry and shouted, "Whether you're wrong or not, this old man doesn't know. What this old man knows is that your soul has been scattered, and you can't even reincarnate. I'm willing." The Sorcerer King's voice became smaller and smaller, and the soul strands became fewer and fewer. Looking at the human-faced dragon tail that propped up Mount Meru, it had now turned into an indomitable god statue and could no longer move. However, the Sorcerer King's voice still lingered around this god statue. Only when you know how to give up can you understand human nature. Spirit, you may not understand. After saying that, the Sorcerer King's soul turned into the last wisp of soul power and tore apart the Buddhist sect's reincarnation power. The soul cultivator's nether lotus petals slowly closed, and the dragon scales with 9 colors also disappeared without trace. Alas, the erased spirit looked a little lonely as it stood there. It looked at the nether blood sea that was slowly disappearing, and then looked at the deity statue with a human face and a dragon tail that did not have any breath. It sighed. Is this human nature? Why don't I understand? Along with this voice, the erased spirit's figure slowly disappeared. I can go now, right? Ziming held back his sadness and hurriedly shouted out. Unfortunately, the erased spirit didn't care about Ziming at all, as if it was reminiscing about the past, and also as if it felt that Ziming's words weren't worth it at all. Ziming's voice seemed to resound in the empty cave and didn't disperse for a long time. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 5044. Xiaohua had just escaped from the sealed space of Mount Meru. As soon as he sensed the aura of the millions of Meng Mountains, he immediately rushed out of the space with the art of going south, going north. Before he could fly out of the teleportation tunnel, he immediately unleashed the sword gourd. Taoist Witch, Thunder Immortal, Feng Wu, and the other clones were also summoned out of his body. Damn it! As soon as Taoist Witch and the others came out of their bodies, they immediately knew what had happened to Xiaohua. They were all filled with righteous indignation. They stood in the air and unleashed their divine abilities, preparing to attack the formation spirit. Unfortunately, whether it was Xiaohua's divine sense, Taoist Witch's soul sense, or Feng Wu's divine sense, none of them could sense the location of the sealed space. What welcomed them was the rumbling sound of thunder high up in the sky. The laws of heaven and earth could no longer tolerate Xiaohua staying in the mortal world again and began to urge him. Xiaohua snorted coldly. While controlling his immortal energy to stabilize the immortal talisman, he also used the secret technique of Qingqiu Mountain to desperately suppress his realm. Fortunately, when he used both methods simultaneously, the thunder gradually disappeared, and everything returned to normal. Xiaohua took a deep breath, closed his eyes slightly, and said in a low voice, "Dawn Rain Mainland, I'm back." In an instant, all kinds of memories, thoughts rushed into Xiaohua's mind like 10,000 galloping horses. Xiaohua had never thought that he would be so excited when he returned to Dawn Rain Mainland. After half a cup of tea's time, Xiaohua finally calmed down. Huang Tong whispered, "Fellow Taoist, the current plan is to prioritize the billions of lives in the 3 continents. Let's go and break the formation." "What formation?" Thunder Immortal asked curiously. "We don't even know if the formation core of the immortal formation is heaven, earth, and human. How do we break the formation?" "That's right." Taoist, which also frowned and said, "Fellow Taoist, your 5 elements wishful staff is not complete yet. Buddha Mithriya, the world's sovereign, Reverend Yin, and Celestial seem to have the power to attack. If the 3 peaks are not the formation core, won't we be dumbfounded? I think it's better to take the long view." Xiaohua nodded and replied, "Fellow Taoists, you're all right. Back when we were in the Wuming Mountain range, I'd already made up my mind. Fellow Taoist Feng Wu, you will go to the Tai Ching sect in Ming Kingdom and search for the heaven, earth, and mortal peaks. You will see if there are any traces of immortal formations on the peaks. Fellow Taoist Lei, take the Kunlun mirror to the netherworld and retrieve the metal earth magnetic field. Ai's blood essence has been nourished in the metal earth magnetic field for hundreds of years. With your power, you will definitely be able to retrieve it. I'm not sure if the Kunlun mirror can contain the metal and earth magnetism. If it doesn't work, you can just turn back. As for I and the other fellow Taoists, we will wait here for Zimming and then plan our next move. Yes. Feng Wu and Taoist Lightning agreed when they heard this, and then they executed their respective spatial movement techniques and tore space apart with the intention of flying away. However, Feng Wu had just torn space apart when she instantly felt something was off, and she withdrew her demon body from the space before crying out with shock. Fellow Taoist, the spatial laws of Daybreak Continent are slightly strange. It can't be. Xiao Hua's heart sank as he looked at Huang Tong. Of course, Huang Tong already knew the difference in space from Feng Wu's comprehension, but Huang Tong still personally waved her claws, and her entire body sank into the space to take a look. At the same time, Xiao Hua also released his divine sense. As expected, Xiao Hua's expression changed slightly when his divine sense only extended for tens of thousands of miles. Within 100 miles, 1,000 miles, or even 10,000 miles, his divine sense was normal, but after 50,000 miles, the space actually folded. His divine sense seemed to be able to explore beyond 50,000 miles, but in reality, his divine sense had already been distorted by the folded space and could not reach beyond 50,000 miles. If not for Xiao Hua's body condensed from the laws, it would not have been easy to discover. Damn it, when Xiao Hua discovered it, Huang Tong also flew out from the space and cursed softly. This Daybreak Continent is indeed the so-called Lost Land. The spatial laws are different from Yilin Continent and the other 3 continents, and there is actually a spatial fault. Taoist which frowned. That's not right. Daybreak Continent is a part of Yilin Continent, and Yilin Continent and the other 3 continents have the same laws of heaven and earth. How can there be a spatial fault here? Xiao Hua looked towards the east and said thoughtfully, if I'm not wrong, it should be because Daybreak Continent is the closest place to the immortal array, and the immortal array affected the laws of heaven and earth. If Daybreak Continent is like this, then it must be even more so in QC. There are even more spatial faults there. But it's fine. Huang Tong stopped in midair and smiled. Within the fault, we can still use our spatial escape techniques, but every time we reach the border of the fault, we have to stop and escape from the void and use ordinary flying techniques or teleportation techniques to cross the fault, and then use our spatial escape techniques again. So troublesome. Lightning Sage said unhappily. I was still thinking that we could reach Mingxi in a moment. Now we have to waste a lot of time. The spatial laws of this place are like this. Our strength cannot exceed the spatial laws. That's all we can do, Feng Wu said, and was about to fly away again, but Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat and said, Fellow Taoist, don't be anxious. What? Feng Wu listened and looked at Xiao Hua in confusion. With a thought, Xiao Hua invited Demon Lord Shi out of the space and asked, how is Long Shinsi now? I'll let Big Brother know. Demon Lord Shi grinned and said, this guy just turned into a demon. That demon dragon bloodline is very powerful, and he doesn't want to give up his human form body, so he's in a deep sleep, waiting for the final fusion between his human form body and the demon dragon bloodline. Xiao Hua frowned and said, Long Shinsi was originally at the peak of 9th grade essence energy. After turning into a demon, his strength must have exceeded 9th grade essence energy. He seems to be stronger than you. Che. Demon Lord Shi curled his lips and said, Big Brother doesn't know. Little brother has a demon body. My strength is limited in the human realm. But when I reach the demon realm, how can I compare to 10th grade essence energy? Also, the demon emperors and demon lords in the demon realm are not comparable to 8th and 9th grade essence energy. Long Shensi is at most a low-level demon lord. He's far from little brother. That's good. Xiao Hua nodded. Big brother is afraid that you won't be able to control Long Shensi and will cause trouble for us. Don't worry, don't worry. Demon Lord Sure patted his chest and guaranteed. Just leave this to little brother. And Big brother called you out today because there's something I need you and Feng Wu to do. Xiao Hua nodded and said, Hee, what are we going to do with fifth brother? Big brother, please tell me. Demon Lord Sure happily asked. Xiao Hua smiled and said, We've already reached Dawn Rain Continent. It's time to break the array. But Big brother has a lot of karma to understand. I can't go for now. And you have the demon body of a demon spirit. You're naturally proficient in arrays. So Big brother wants you and Feng Wu to help Big brother take a look at the situation of the immortal array. What do you think? Ah, well said, well said. Demon Lord Sure laughed loudly. Isn't it just an array? Little brother is the best. Little brother will help Big brother take a look. But you have to change a little. Don't disturb the human cultivators of Dawn Rain Continent. Xiao Hua looked at Demon Lord Shure's arrogant demonic chi and smiled. When Demon Venerable Shure heard this, he immediately retracted the demonic chi around his body. In just a moment, he turned into a slightly sallow Xiao Hua. All right, that's it. Xiao Hua nodded in satisfaction. You're from the demon race. Maybe you don't understand the situation of the human race. Listen to Feng Wu. Xiao Hua's words were like he was talking to an ignorant child, but Demon Lord Sure felt at ease after hearing it. He smiled and said, Big brother, don't worry. I'll listen to fifth brother. All right, go. Xiao Hua waved his hand. Feng Wu brought Demon Lord Sure and tore through the void. Lightning Immortal also cupped his hands toward Xiao Hua and then headed towards Mingxi. After Feng Wu, Demon Lord Sure and Lightning Immortal left. Huang Tong felt strange and said in a low voice, Dao friend, why don't you ask Mithriao Buddha to come out? No matter what, he's the future Buddha Lord. He must be able to sense Mount Meru. Xiao Hua looked at Huang Tong, who was a phoenix Dharma body, and knew that although he had more experience than him, he had more intrigue in the Xinyuan space, and lacked the patience of the human race. So he smiled and said, Mithriao Buddha is the future Buddha Lord, and he will soon be received by the West to enter the Buddha kingdom. I can't delay his cultivation because of this. I can't sow discord between him and the Buddha kingdom. Moreover, I was born in Dawn Rain Continent. Didn't you hear Ziming talk about it? Dawn Rain Continent already has a fortune gate that worships Dao Master Xiao. In the past, I planted a lot of grain and millet seeds in Dawn Rain Continent and Milliameng Mountains. Because of the existence of the immortal array, the power of faith of these hundreds of years has been accumulated. If we ask Mithriao Buddha to come out now, the power of faith alone is enough for him to enter the Buddha kingdom. We still need Mithriao Buddha's wonderful tree of 7 treasures to break the array, so we can't let him out now. Speaking of this, Xiao Hua suddenly remembered something and said to Huang Tong, By the way, fellow Taoist, I also promised to rescue Empress Xianwan of the demon realm. Although you and Ya can go alone, I'm still worried. Why don't you go? Of course. Huang Tong nodded. There are many things in Dawn Rain Continent fellow Taoist can't handle alone. I am willing to help. Let Dai, and you and Ya out. I'll take them with me. Okay. Xiao Hua was about to take out the Kunlun mirror, but he suddenly remembered that the Kunlun mirror had been taken away by the Thunder Immortal. He frowned and was about to pull Yu and Ya and Dai, out of Shenhua Continent. It was at this moment that Xiao Hua's thoughts changed again, and he shook his head. No, you can't go. Huang Tong was surprised and asked, Why can't I go? P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it. Vote for it. Vote for it. Donate. And Chapter 5045. Xiao Hua sighed and said earnestly, Xianwan's kindness to this poor Taoist is as heavy as a mountain. Although her matter seems very simple now, and even if you and Ya went over, he could solve it, but this is not the way to resolve the cause and effect. To save Xianwan, this poor Taoist must go over personally. Huang Tong clapped her hands and said, You're right. Although I am you and you are me, Xianwan doesn't know. She helped you in the past, and we have to repay her kindness. You have to go. However, if I go, she will have to suffer more in the formation. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. This is also what I was thinking that day. After the matter of Million Meng Mountains is settled, we can just use the space escape technique. Huang Tong persuaded, it won't take much time. Besides, Xianwan has been trapped in the formation for hundreds of years. She won't be able to sense it even if it takes a few more days. Xiao Hua suddenly felt impatient. He looked into the distance and said, Why hasn't Ziming come out yet? It's only been an hour. Don't worry. Huang Tong looked at the silent Taoist witch and said. At this moment, Taoist witch suddenly raised his head and said to Xiao Hua, I will go and see if there are any traces of the Buddhist formation. Thank you, Taoist. Xiao Hua nodded and replied. Taoist witch's body swayed. He didn't use any space escape technique. He just flew slowly in the direction where he came from. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, a day had passed. Taoist witch didn't return, and Ziming didn't appear either. Xiao Hua was already panicking in his heart. Now that he thought about what the Shaman King said in the space yesterday, Xiao Hua vaguely understood the situation of the Shaman King and Ziming. Xiao Hua understood that Ziming probably couldn't come out of the sealed space of the Buddhist formation. After another 3 days, Taoist witch returned. Xiao Hua looked at Taoist witch and shook his head. It's been 4 days. Huang Tong urged. I'm afraid Ziming can't come out. Before Huang Tong finished, Xiao Hua said, No need to rush. Although the Shaman King said to wait for a day, Ziming treated me so well. I have to wait for 10 days. Huang Tong was silent. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Ziming still didn't appear. Forget it. Seeing that the afterglow of the setting sun had already disappeared into the distant sky, Xiao Hua looked up at the sky and sighed. Looks like I won't be able to see Ziming again in this life. Let's go. Where are we going? Huang Tong asked knowingly. Xiao Hua looked in a direction and said, It's naturally the Hutu stronghold. Ziming can't get out of the sealed space, but I must fulfill my promise to her. Moreover, this is the knot in her heart for the rest of her life. No matter what, I should be the one to solve it. All right. Huang Tong and Taoist sorcerer looked at each other and were about to move. Right at this moment, Xiao Hua's figure shook. He stopped in disbelief and looked at Taoist shaman. Taoist shaman's face was also filled with wild joy as he cried out, The new Shaman King has appeared. I have already sensed the change in the fate of the millions of Meng Mountains. Just as Taoist shaman finished speaking, countless lights shot up into the sky from the depths of the millions of Meng Mountains. Waves of strange ripples spread out like rings in the mountains. At the same time, a series of sizzling sounds came from the sky and the abyss. Amidst these sounds, the chanting of gods and ghosts surged out like waves, falling into the night and the starry sky. The originally dark, starry sky suddenly became clear amidst these sounds. The stars were like bright lights, flashing desperately. The crescent moon that looked like a small boat also raised its sail, and a layer of halo floated high into the sky. The brilliance of the stars and moon was like a waterfall illuminating the millions of Meng Mountains. At a glance, it was almost as bright as day. However, in just a few breaths, the strange sounds came again. A huge black shadow rushed out from all over the millions of Meng Mountains and landed in the sky, forming the shape of a human face and a dragon head. This black shadow blocked the brilliance of the stars and moon, and the millions of Meng Mountains fell into darkness again. Xiao Hua was shocked. He sensed something and hurriedly looked at Taoist shaman. Taoist shaman narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice, Sure is finally leaving. Damn it. Xiao Hua cursed in a low voice. The Shaman King is gone. Doesn't that mean only Ziming is left in the sealed space? There's no other way. Taoist shaman shook his head and said, Although I have a connection with the fate of soul cultivators, the Shaman King has just entered the cycle of reincarnation and hasn't formed a flesh body. I can't sense the sealed space yet. Fellow Taoist, calm down, Huang Tong hurriedly said. Even if we can sense the sealed space, we can't go there now. In a sealed space, even if we join forces, we won't be a match for the formation spirit of Mount Meru. The darkness was still darkness, even darker than Xiaohua's eyes. However, this darkness couldn't stop the hope in Xiaohua's eyes. He nodded slowly and said, I know. I just want to look in Ziming's direction and wait for her for one more night. Hello. At this moment, there seemed to be the wails of soul beasts in the millions of Meng mountains, one after another. The black shadow that covered the sky seemed to turn its head in the wind and take a deep look at the millions of Meng mountains in the dark night. Then it slowly extended into the sky rumble. All of a sudden, the sky turned fiery red. Tens of thousands of shooting stars appeared out of nowhere. These shooting stars were crimson red, and they looked like burning clouds as they floated above the millions of Meng mountains. The movement of their movement was like the rumbling of thunder. Then, the whistling sound was heard again. All the meteors dragged their fiery red tails and swayed as they fell from the sky. They turned into a meteor shower and passed through the black shadow with a human face and a dragon tail, landing all over the millions of Meng mountains. Roar, roar, roar. The roar of the soul beast could be heard once again, and it was filled with excitement. As for the black shadow that was the size of Meng mountains, it was riddled with holes by the meteor shower. Streams of starlight once again pierced through the black shadow and landed on the mountain range. Heaven and earth's sacrifice. Taoist, which muttered to himself, the witch king has fallen. The sky's sacrifices with the stars, and the earth's sacrifices with the soul beasts. Sad, sad. As Taoist, which muttered to himself, the black shadow had turned into black cotton. It drifted down and dissipated. The moonlight dimmed, the sky lost its color, and the mountains fell silent. In the end, the entire world fell into darkness again. This darkness was so deep, just like Xiaohua's lonely and cold heart. In the darkness, Xiaohua seemed to hear the cries of the millions of Meng mountains. The mountains were also mourning, and the people were also choking. The night would eventually pass, just like the passing of an era. The next day, the sky was still gray and there was no morning sun. In the mountains, the birds were not as chirping as before. It was very quiet. Xiaohua looked around and felt a little sad. He sighed and said, Fellow Taoists, let's go. After saying that, Xiaohua moved and flew toward the Huda village without using the spatial escape technique. Taoist, which in Huangtong knew that Xiaohua was in a bad mood, so they didn't say much and follow behind. Fellow Taoist, suddenly, Xiaohua said, What should we do when we are alive? Huangtong was stunned. She looked at Taoist, which and hurriedly nodded. Fellow Taoist is right. Even if a mayfly is born, it can see the dawn and dusk. If you see the epiphyllum for a moment, you can also leave your fragrance in the world. But some people are suppressed in the sealed space for the rest of their lives because of what they want to do. They can't even take a step out. Xiaohua said faintly, I can't imagine that the shaman king could be so patient. Taoist, which nodded. Not only him, but also many shaman kings before him. And their lives are far from what ordinary mortals can compare to. Mortals can endure for 100 years, but they have to endure for tens of thousands of years, because they have their own beliefs. Huang Tong agreed. This belief is more tenacious than any power. Fellow Taoist, think about the tens of thousands of years we spent in the heavenly prison. Isn't it the same? If it weren't for the concern of family and the fortune gate, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to endure for so long, right? So fellow Taoist sacrifice is no less than others. Taoist, which continued, fellow Taoist always thinks about others, but neglects yourself. Seeing is big, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is big. Anyone is an ant in front of the heavenly Tao. Xiaohua's face showed a bitter smile. Being small in the heart doesn't necessarily mean it is small. Only by being humble can one improve. Fellow Taoist, didn't you see that even Taoist Master Jin Sheng, a supreme cultivator of the Heavenly Alliance, was also possessed by the Devil Clan. Although Taoist is 1 foot tall, the Devil Clan is 10 feet tall, but if he has a humble heart, the Devil Clan won't be able to invade him, right? The Shaman King has passed away, but Shaman Wang Ming is coming. Taoist Witch laughed. Without loss, how can there be hope? Fellow Taoist, cheer up. Your descendant has already formed a body in the Yulin continent. When he returns to the Wuming mountain range, it will be the beginning of a new era for soul cultivators. Even if Ziming can't come out now, but with Shaman Wang Ming, in 100 years, she will regain her freedom. Right? That's right, that's right. Xiaohua also forced a smile. Since Ziming can't come out, I can't make this matter clear, and I can't wait until then. Today, I might as well give Shaman Wang Ming a surprise. However, just as Xiaohua said this, his mood improved a bit. When he released his divine sense, his expression suddenly changed. Xiaohua looked in a certain direction and angrily roared, "Damn thing." Then, Xiaohua's body shook and he teleported to that place. Following Xiaohua were thunderbolts that condensed in the sky. It happened so suddenly that Huang Tong and Taoist were caught off guard. However, when they looked at that place, they couldn't help but show surprise on their faces. Almost at the same time, they shrugged and said in unison, "This guy is simply looking for death. He's here to make fun of you." Then, the two of them teleported over as well. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it. Give it as a reward. And Chapter 5046. It was a rather large abyss, and the walls to the left were covered with vines unique to millions of Meng mountains. Dewdrops that looked like tears were flowing on the vines, and a thick fog shrouded the entire abyss. Ordinary eyes would not be able to see through this fog. It was even more impossible to see the dewdrops on the vines and the reddish-brown mountain rocks beneath the dewdrops. Asterisk whoosh, asterisk a soft sound of air breaking came from above the abyss, and a peerless beauty in plain clothes flew past in a daze. Wasn't that Jiuxia? Although Jiuxia's current appearance was not as stunning as her original appearance, the faint glow set off her delicate and pretty face, and she still gave off a peerless aura. Even if some people's extraordinariness was concealed, they would still stand out like an all, and Jiuxia was as usual. What? How did this happen? Jiuxia looked a little flustered, and she thought to herself, how did the Shaman King suddenly fall? Could it be that something happened to Xiaolang? Could it be that something happened to the new Shaman King as well? Jiuxia might not care about the fall of the Shaman King, but she definitely cared about the birth of Shaman King Ming. The direction Jiuxia was flying in was naturally where the Buddhist formation was sealed. Although she had left the Buddhist formation a long time ago, she still missed it and did not stray too far away. When she noticed the strange phenomenon in millions of Meng mountains, even if she was from the Fox clan, even if she was from the Qingqiu clan, she still could not let go of the kinship that flowed in her blood. She could not help but fly back. However, just as Jiuxia flew past the abyss, there was a loud bang, and dozens of fiery red chains shot out from the abyss like pythons. Not only did they block Jiuxia's path forward, they also sealed off her path of retreat. The flames on the chains turned blackish red, and they flickered like the fangs of a venomous snake. Near the flames, the void was slightly distorted, as if it had been burned through by the flames. Jiuxia immediately woke up from her daze. Without thinking, her body swayed. Not only did she not retreat, she also did not rush up into the sky. Instead, her body sank and fell towards the bottom of the abyss. However, before Jiuxia's figure disappeared into the bottom of the abyss, she flew out in a panic. At the bottom of the abyss, a huge silver wolf totem flashed and appeared. The wolf head on the wolf totem seemed to be alive. In its bloody mouth, white wolf fangs flashed with a cold light. Boom! At this moment, dozens of chains rapidly intersected above Jiuxia's head, emitting rumbling sounds. Flashing silver runes appeared at the top of the chains. These runes gave birth to a powerful binding force that enveloped Jiuxia like a heavenly net. Of course, Jiuxia wouldn't just sit there and wait for death. She opened her mouth, and a gust of wind suddenly appeared. A huge gust of wind rushed into the sky, trying to break through the net. Unfortunately, although the wind was able to support the heavenly net and even extinguish most of the flames, the silver rune was like a rock in the wind, unshakable. Damn it, this is a talisman from the immortal realm of the human race. Jiuxia suddenly understood and couldn't help but curse under her breath. Her hands formed a seal, and a light green demon aura rushed up, barely holding up the chains. She shouted, "I wonder which senior from the immortal realm has descended to the mortal world? Why are you blocking my path here?" A burst of laughter sounded from the abyss far away. Then, the silver wolf transformed into its demon form and landed in front of Jiuxia. It mocked, "If a senior from the immortal realm came, would you still be able to stand here safely?" Seeing the silver wolf appear, Jiuxia's face was filled with surprise. She asked curiously, "Where are you from? Why are you blocking me here?" "Haha, you cunning little fox. Don't you see the totem of my snow wolf clan?" The snow wolf laughed and said mockingly, "Do I have to tell you that I came from the 10,000 demon realm? Did my snow wolf king send me to capture you?" "Snow wolf king?" Jiuxia's expression tightened. She hurriedly looked around and exclaimed, "Could it be that the Snow Wolf King can also enter the Dawn Rain continent? That's strange." The Snow Wolf looked at Jiuxia with a strange expression on his face. He said curiously, "The Fox clan has always been cunning and cautious. That day, my Snow Wolf King chased you for 1,000,000 miles and still couldn't capture you. But today, you were so careless. Not only did you not discover my Yuan Shun, you didn't even explore this dangerous abyss and hurriedly flew past. Haha, so that's how it is." At this point, the Snow Wolf suddenly realized something and laughed. "You actually gave birth to a descendant in the Lost Land. No wonder your divine ability was greatly reduced. It was caused by a great loss of vitality. Otherwise, with my methods, how could I capture you?" Snow Wolf. Jiuxia's face was pale. She couldn't stand steadily in the air. She whispered, "I have escaped into the Dawn Rain continent for nearly 1,000 years. I think you have followed me here for 1,000 years. To be honest, I only offended the Snow Wolf King because of some small grudges. After 1,000 years, I think she has already forgotten about it." Unfortunately, before Jiuxia could finish, the Snow Wolf laughed and said, "Little fox, don't say any more. All of this is a waste of your effort. Since the Snow Wolf King sent me to capture you, how can I return empty-handed? Besides, how do you know that I almost lost my life in order to find your trace? If I can't capture you, I'll be letting myself down." After speaking, the Snow Wolf didn't waste any more words with Jiuxia. He opened his mouth, and a mouthful of demonic chi fell into the chain. Boom! The chain fell down like a flood dragon, wanting to firmly bind Jiuxia. Jiuxia was shocked. She gritted her teeth. Woo! She opened her mouth, and a fist-sized demonic pill flew out. This demonic pill fell into the air. The light and shadow swayed and turned into the illusion of a six-tailed fox. At the same time, thousands of illusions were born in the illusion. They overlapped like waves surging towards the Snow Wolf. When the Snow Wolf saw the illusion, a silver light flashed in his eyes, and his expression became sluggish. Unfortunately, just as the illusion was about to break through the chain, Kachacha, silver lightning swarmed from the chain like a swarm of bees. The talismans that were as thin as ants surged out and shattered the illusion. Ayo! The little fox on top of the demonic pill howled and shrank back into the demonic pill. The silver light in the Snow Wolf's eyes also disappeared. The Snow Wolf was still in shock and said, "Damn it." Then, with a wave of the Snow Wolf's hand, a fiery red chain sprang out from Jiuxia's back and turned into a long spear. Pooh! It pierced Jiuxia's collarbone. Ah! Jiuxia cried out in pain. Her charming body went limp in midair. The demonic pill's brilliance dimmed and fell in her mouth. Seeing the chain penetrate Jiuxia's body, the snow wolf knew that the situation was over. He couldn't help but laugh coldly. Little fox, you really deserve to be unlucky. I just came from the Yilin continent to the Lost Lands, and I already sense your aura. Unfortunately, before the snow wolf could finish speaking, a spiritual will that was even more ferocious than a meteor came crashing down. The huge force not only trapped the snow wolf, but the chi wave also blocked the snow wolf's words. The snow wolf was shocked. He hurriedly urged the chain to fly out, wanting to block the spiritual will. However, wherever the spiritual will passed, boom, a loud sound rang out, and the chain flew out like wild grass. Ka-cha-cha. At the same time, in the sky, the thunderclouds surged forward faster than the wind. 10 thick lightning bolts came crashing down from the sky, striking directly at the snow wolf. The snow wolf didn't dare to be slow. His body fell rapidly, and the wolf totem that was blocking Jiuxia's body shot up into the sky. Countless demonic chi and the power of the stars and moon surged out from the wolf's head, transforming into a huge wolf head that pounced towards the lightning bolts. Poo-pee-you. Where the lightning bolts landed, it was as if they had hit a broken piece of cotton. Not only was the wolf head destroyed, but after the wolf head was destroyed, the lightning bolts were like swords that ruthlessly struck the wolf totem. The unbreakable wolf totem in the eyes of the snow wolf instantly turned into fragments that floated down into the abyss. Roar! A furious roar sounded from afar. Amidst the rumbling of thunder, Xiaohua's figure arrived while stepping on thunder. Xiaohua, Jiuxia almost blurted out. However, before the sound came out, Jiuxia immediately suppressed it with all his might. Although his eyes were filled with ecstasy, he still clenched his teeth and didn't shout out. Seeing the bloodstains on Jiuxia's body, Xiaohua felt a burst of heartache for no reason. He roared, "Damn it! Even the Snow Wolf King was killed by this Xiao. You, a little snow wolf, dare to show off in front of this old man? If not for the fact that I couldn't see through your goal, this old man would have killed you in the Wuming mountain range." As he spoke, Xiaohua waved his right hand. A big hand that was like thunder grabbed out. Under the big hand, the space around the snow wolf was imprisoned. The snow wolf couldn't even move. As the big hand fell, the snow wolf was caught in the big hand. Light and shadow flowed, and demonic chi overflowed. The snow wolf was about to be crushed into meat paste by Xiaohua. "Xiao! Daoist Xiao! You are Daoist Xiao!" Hearing this, the snow wolf couldn't help but be stunned. When he woke up, he exclaimed, "Daoist Xiao, spare my life! Daoist Xiao, brother-in-law!" Seeing Xiaohua so powerful, Jiuxia was almost drunk. She moaned and said in a low voice, Let her go." "Oh." Xiaohua was stunned and looked at Jiuxia in disbelief. However, when Xiaohua saw Jiuxia's figure clearly, he was shocked again. His eyes revealed disbelief and a deep sense of loss, because he could see that Jiuxia's primordial yin had been lost. "Brother-in-law." Jiuxia's face showed shyness and shame. With a voice as low as a mosquito's, she said, "You can see it too. I just left my bloodline around Flowing Cloud like a month ago. Don't you humans always say that you have to accumulate good karma for your children? I'll spare her life for the sake of my descendants." Xiaohua frowned. Looking at this Jiuxia who was so beautiful that she left a deep impression in his mind, even when he was having sex with Ziming, he asked in a low voice, "She is the snow wolf of the 10,000 demon realm. Are you sure you want to let her live?" P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 5047. Brother-in-law. Although Jiuxia's face was pale, her charming smile was still charming. She said coquettishly, "Didn't I tell you before? There is something I need your help with. I thought you would only be able to help me after 100,000 years. I didn't expect that in just a few hundred years, you would be able to kill the great Saint Snow Wolf King. Without the Snow Wolf King, how could I be afraid of the Snow Wolf clan? This Snow Wolf was just following orders. If it wasn't for my weak body today, how could she have succeeded? Xiao Hua heard and suddenly understood. He thought for a moment and nodded. So this is what you want me to do? I thought. Forget it. Since this is your choice, I will listen to you. With that, Xiao Hua raised his hand and grabbed at the air. The fiery red chain slowly shrank under the thunder and was pulled out of Jiuxia's body. Streams of blood dripped down from Jiuxia's body and the chains. Xiao Hua hurriedly took out a pill from the space and handed it to Jiuxia. Take the pill first. Jiuxia smiled sweetly. Brother-in-law, I am from the Fox clan. I can't take a human pill. Don't worry. Huang Tong also flew over. Looking at this beautiful woman, she said lightly, the pill that Taoist Xiao gave you is really refined for the demon clan. Oh, Jiuxia was surprised. She took the pill and looked at Xiao Hua strangely. Brother-in-law, it has only been a few hundred years. You are actually so powerful. Moreover, you can refine pills for my demon clan? After saying that, Jiuxia suddenly understood. She looked at Xiao Hua and said, I understand now. Brother-in-law has been stranded in the demon realm all these years. No wonder you could kill the Snow Wolf King. Io, that's not right. It has only been a few hundred years. How can brother-in-law be so powerful? Jiuxia kept calling him brother-in-law. It was as intimate as when she was with Hong Xia Fairy. Xiao Hua smiled and said, we will talk about this later. Brother-in-law will give you a few small surprises. Jiuxia took the pill and clapped her hands. Brother-in-law has given me enough surprises today, and to be able to see brother-in-law, I am also very surprised. I don't need any other surprises. Xiao Hua's mood was slightly better. He turned to look at Snow Wolf, his eyes like lightning. Looking at Xiao Hua's aura that was similar to that of the Thunder God, how was it the same as before in the Yilan continent? Snow Wolf couldn't help but tremble as he begged, Senior, please spare my life. Senior, please spare my life. Xiao Hua said, this old man has traveled with you for several years, so I've long known that you're a demon. The only reason we haven't eliminated you is because you've never harmed any human cultivators. However, you have violated this old man's greatest taboo today. You may be spared from death, but you cannot be spared from punishment. Yes. Thank you for your forgiveness, Senior. Snow Wolf was overjoyed when he heard this. He kowtowed and cried out. Let this old man ask you. Xiao Hua asks, how did you pass through the Netherworld Blood Sea? Did anyone else pass? Snow Wolf didn't dare to delay and hurriedly told him what he had seen. Hearing that the Snow Wolf actually had a talisman from the immortal realm, Xiao Hua already understood. However, he still pretended to be suspicious as he asked, where did you get the immortal talisman? Snow Wolf didn't dare to hide anything and hurriedly said, that was given by my great sage. According to the great sage, enough, there's no need to say any more. Xiao Hua saw that Snow Wolf was about to reveal the immortal envoy's human form and hurriedly waved his hand. Snow Wolf King has already been executed. This old man won't mention this matter anymore. If you don't harass the Fox clan, this old man will definitely not make things difficult for you. Yes, this junior understands. Snow Wolf didn't dare to say more and only kowtowed without saying anything. Xiao Hua handed the chain to Huang Tong and said to him, fellow Taoist, please use this chain to imprison this Snow Wolf in a secret place as punishment. No problem. This old man is the best at this. Huang Tong laughed loudly and took the chain. With a grab of his phoenix claws, he took the soulless Snow Wolf. With a flap of his wings, he disappeared in a moment. After Huang Tong left, Xiao Hua said to Taoist Witch, fellow Taoist, help me keep watch. I have something to explain to Lady Jiuxia. No problem. Taoist Witch's figure flashed and rushed into the sky, standing among the clouds. Xiao Hua looked around solemnly. With a wave of his hand, he released the seal of overturning the sea. Then, he took out the jade talisman and set up the complete capital sky star array. Brother-in-law, Seeing Xiao Hua so serious, Jiuxia was also stunned. She whispered, "What are you doing? Do you have a little surprise for me?" "Don't worry. It's definitely a surprise." Xiao Hua patiently set up the star array and used his divine sense to look around. After confirming that there was no consciousness or aura, he said to Jiuxia, "Jiuxia, I should have given you the complete thing, but with your current cultivation, I'm afraid you won't be able to keep it. So, stand still." As he spoke, Xiao Hua looked at Jiuxia. Jiuxia was stunned and also looked at Xiao Hua. She was trying her best to hide it, but when she saw Xiao Hua's eyes, she couldn't help but reveal the strong feelings in her heart. However, just as Jiuxia was in a daze, a thick crystal thread appeared between Xiao Hua's eyebrows. This crystal thread was 9-colored and shone brilliantly as it fell between Jiuxia's eyebrows. Boom! Countless lights, images, and talismans turned into a turbulent wave that crashed into Jiuxia's mind. Huh? Jiuxia cried out in surprise. Then her face turned solemn. She didn't dare to be negligent and immediately flashed with 9-colored light, revealing her 6-tailed fox form. She assumed a strange posture and allowed Xiao Hua to transmit the Qingqiu lineage's inheritance into her mind. At the same time, circles of ripples turned into the shape of a fox and rippled in all directions. However, this ripple was blocked by the capital star array and couldn't leak out at all. It could only roar and brew within the array. After a full hour, the light around Jiuxia slowly retracted into her body. She then opened her eyes, which were filled with absolute fanaticism and an indescribable realization. Jiuxia transformed into her human form and respectfully knelt on the ground, kowtowing. Jiuxia greets the Sacred King. Sacred King? Xiao Hua was stunned and hurriedly helped Jiuxia up, saying, "This Xiao is just Xiao Hua, not some Sacred King. This is your Qingqiu lineage's inheritance. This Xiao is just returning it to you with the hand of heaven." Jiuxia stood up, the respect on her face completely gone. She then smiled faintly. "This little sister won't mention this anymore. You'll know in the future. However, this little sister has a small request that I hope brother-in-law can agree to." "Say it." Xiao Hua nodded. "As long as it's not too difficult for me, I'll agree to it." Xiao Hua's words had a double meaning, but the sourness in his heart was real. After all, this peerless woman in front of him had already left her bloodline in Million Meng Mountains before he returned to Dawn Rain Continent. Thinking back to Jiuxia's little flirtation with him back then, it was impossible for Xiao Hua not to feel a little disappointed. Jiuxia was so sharp. Seeing Xiao Hua like this, she felt sweetness and joy in her heart. However, her face still blushed. She lowered her head and said, "Brother-in-law, this little sister knows that the love between you and Big Sister is stronger than gold. Although this little sister has some small expectations for you, this little sister is afraid that Big Sister will think too much. Brother-in-law has been gone for many years without any news. This little sister thought that she would never see brother-in-law again." Xiao Hua's words had a double meaning, but Jiuxia's words were naked. Of course, it was this kind of naked that covered up the truth of the matter. The entire scene became awkward in an instant. Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand, saying, "Jiuxia, you're thinking too much. Is that so?" Jiuxia raised her head. The pair of big watery eyes on her charming face were incomparably alluring. She seemed to be asking a question, but also seemed to be talking to herself. She murmured, "Brother-in-law didn't think too much." Cough, cough. Xiao Hua didn't dare to look at Jiuxia anymore. He hurriedly turned his face and coughed a few times, asking, That brother-in-law, who is it?" Jiuxia covered her mouth and laughed. "The so-called brother-in-law. I'm afraid that brother-in-law won't be able to see him. Last night, I don't know what strange phenomenon occurred in the Starry Sky Formation. This little sister is anxious to settle down her son. Your brother-in-law has already fallen in the millions of Meng Mountains." Xiao Hua suddenly understood that Jiuxia was talking about soul beasts. However, He looked at Zhu Xia's smiling face and asked curiously, "He has already fallen, but you're actually not sad?" "Brother-in-law, this little sister is a fox, not a human." Zhu Xia smiled and said, "In this little sister's eyes, falling is not the end. After all, we already have a son. This son is his beginning. This little sister taking good care of our son is the best repayment for him. Of course, this little sister's heart is also sad. However, in the eyes of others, isn't this sadness just a joke? Why should this little sister let others know? If this little sister's heart isn't a mess, how could she not notice and fall into the snow wolf's trap?" "Zhu Xia, brother-in-law has misunderstood you. Xiao Hua was also considered a great sage of the human race. But in front of Zhu Xia of Qingxiu Mountain, he was still deceived enough. He hurriedly said, 'If you have something to say, just say it. As long as brother-in-law can do it, I will definitely not refuse.' He, brother-in-law is thinking too much." Zhu Xia smiled and said, "This little sister just wants brother-in-law to take out Qingxiu Mountain Xingyu and let this little sister comprehend it. Oh, brother-in-law understands." Xiao Hua's face reddened, and he hurriedly put his hand into his bosom as if he wanted the Xingyu. He said again, "Zhu Xia, if it's possible, I'll give this to you." "Don't, brother-in-law." Zhu Xia pursed her lips and smiled. "This Xingyu was originally obtained by you, so it's naturally yours. Why are you giving it to me? Moreover, didn't you say so yourself? This item is of great importance, and with this little sister's strength, I can't protect it. Rather than leaving it here and harming this little sister, why don't brother-in-law hold it for this little sister?" But brother-in-law is going to ascend soon." Xiao Hua's hand stopped there, and he did not take out the Shengyu. He frowned and said, Zhu Xia's face was filled with ecstasy, and she said with a smile, "Then this little sister congratulates brother-in-law first. Brother-in-law is really a genius. This is only a few hundred years since we last met, and you're actually going to ascend. This little sister doesn't even dare to dream of it. However, brother-in-law doesn't need to worry. If brother-in-law doesn't take the Xingyu, this little sister won't be able to find you in the future. If brother-in-law takes the Xingyu, this little sister will be able to go to the immortal world to find brother-in-law." P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 5048. Zhu Xia's ecstasy was real. She had made up her mind not to see Xiao Hua again, but she didn't expect him to save her as soon as he came out of the Buddhist formation. Now, he even gave her the inheritance of Qingxiu Mountain and Shengyu of Qingxiu Mountain's lineage. How could she not know? Her karma with this man had just begun. "You're thinking too much. I'm going to the immortal world, and you're ascending to the Demon Alliance." Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. As he spoke, he took out the nine-tailed fox sculpture. As soon as the nine-tailed fox Xingyu appeared, the fluctuations in the entire formation boiled violently and surged toward Xingyu. Zhu Xia opened her mouth and spat out a breath of clear air, which fell into the nine-tailed fox Xingyu. Xingyu let out a roar, and the phenomenon that had appeared in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm also appeared at the same time. Zhu Xia didn't dare to be negligent. She swayed and fell into Xingyu's nine-colored brilliance. Whoosh! The nine-tailed fox sculpture suddenly seemed to come alive. The nine-colored halo quickly retracted, and a living one-tailed Zhu Xia appeared before Xiaohua's eyes. Then 2 tails, 3 tails until 9 tails. After 9 tails, countless thin thunderbolts turned into 9 colors and entered Zhu Xia's body, and the fluctuations that had been overflowing in the capital star formation were all swept away. While Zhu Xia was comprehending Xingyu's various realms, Xiao Hua wasn't idle either. He had been practicing Qingxiu Mountain's inheritance, and seeing Zhu Xia using the nine-tailed fox's body to comprehend, he hurriedly sat down cross-legged and opened his eyes, quietly watching everything that was happening before him. The nine-tailed fox's various color changes, and were all captured by Xiaohua's eyes. Although it was only a few hours, Xiaohua felt that he had gained much more than if he had comprehended it himself for 100 years. In particular, with the comprehension of Jiuxia's body, Xiaohua's foundation and direction of cultivation of Qingqiu Mountain's secret technique would not be wrong. It was only a matter of time before he succeeded. Sigh. Seeing that Jiuxia had returned to her human form, the brilliance around her receding, and her previous charm no longer exposed, Xiaohua sighed thoughtfully. Jiuxia, rather than saying that I helped you, it's better to say that you helped me. He, brother-in-law. Jiuxia smiled and said, you and I are a family, so why do we have to separate? As he said, Jiuxia passing you to Xiaohua again and said, brother-in-law, you accept this item. From now on, if it weren't for little sister. Oh, even if little sister is right in front of you, you can't take it out. Brother-in-law will naturally know the secrets of this item in the future. Xiaohua originally didn't want to take it, but after hearing Jiuxia's words, he nodded solemnly and said, brother-in-law knows. I won't let anyone else see it. That's right, even big sister can't do it. Jiuxia blinked mischievously and smiled. This is a little secret between me and brother-in-law. Brother-in-law knows. Xiaohua nodded and kept Xingyu. After thinking for a moment, he asked, brother-in-law just came back from Yilan continent. I wonder, without waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, Jiuxia's face also showed an apologetic expression. I'm sorry, brother-in-law. Little sister also has a lot of things to do. After parting with brother-in-law that day, other than asking sword cultivators to inquire about brother-in-law's whereabouts, I didn't pay attention to sword cultivators and Dao cultivators anymore. Little sister also doesn't know how big sister is now. All right, Xiaohua nodded and said helplessly, after brother-in-law is done, I'll go find her, Jiuxia said curiously, why is brother-in-law going after you're done? Could it be that brother-in-law has something important to do? Hearing this, Xiaohua's heart moved, and he nodded. That's right, brother-in-law does have something important that needs your help. You need my help? Jiuxia was even more stunned and hurriedly asked. Brother-in-law, quickly say it. Xiaohua didn't hide much from Jiuxia and told her about his experience and the matters of the three continents. Hearing this, the little fox's heart shook. She didn't expect Xiaohua to have such a fortuitous encounter, and even more, didn't expect that at the end of the sea, there was an immortal formation that no one would have thought of. Moreover, on the other side of the immortal formation, hundreds of millions of lives were already in danger, and the entire three continents had already fallen into an apocalyptic disaster. Brother-in-law, Jiuxia didn't need Xiaohua to say more, and immediately nodded. Little sister understands. Although little sister hasn't contacted sword cultivators for a long time, little sister still has some influence over there. Speaking up to here, Jiuxia was a little sad and said in a low voice, actually, little sister doesn't need to do anything. Brother-in-law is now the supreme of the human race. As long as he calls out, who would dare to disobey? Xiaohua smiled and said, brother-in-law has never dared to have too many extravagant hopes for people's hearts. After all, the three continents aren't Daybreak Continent. The cultivators of Daybreak Continent won't take the Confucian cultivators, Buddhist sect, and demon race of the three continents seriously. Therefore, brother-in-law still hopes that you can help brother-in-law. However, before you help brother-in-law, you'd better take care of your body first. This matter has already reached the final step. We can't be too anxious. That's true. Your little sister's brother-in-law. If little sister doesn't help you, who else should I help? I'm afraid there aren't many people in the entire Daybreak Continent who are of the same mind as brother-in-law. Jiuxia smiled faintly. Even the gloomy horizon was about to clear up. But without waiting for Xiaohua to speak, Jiuxia rolled her eyes again. Using her small hand to cover her small mouth, she laughed and said, brother-in-law is still the one who can endure silently. If it was little sister, How could little sister have mingled with a group of nascent soul and gold core cultivators for so long? I'm afraid that I would have already used magic to force Dupont. Sai, brother-in-law, doesn't dare. Xiao Hua turned his head and thought about it. He was really a little scared. Brother-in-law is afraid that you'll mess things up. You can't pass through the restrictions of Wuming Mountain Range and Million Mountain Range. But even so, brother-in-law, speaking up to here, Xiao Hua was a little hesitant. Oh, brother-in-law, Jiuxia asked curiously, what did you encounter in the restrictions of Wuming Mountain Range? But I saw that Snow Wolf was able to pass through with the help of some immortal talisman. With brother-in-law's ability, there shouldn't be any difficulties. Of course. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and decided to hide it. He said with a smile, although brother-in-law encountered some difficulties, we still came here. These difficulties have nothing to do with you. Brother-in-law won't tell you in detail. All right then, Jiuxia said with a smile. Little sister won't ask anymore. Little sister will go to the place of sword cultivators to take a look and see if I can find any records of immortal formations. Jiuxia, your body is weak. Take these things. Xiao Hua hurriedly took out a few storage rings from the space and handed them to Jiuxia. Cultivate along the way. If it wasn't for the important matter, brother-in-law wouldn't be willing to let you run around so much. Thank you, brother-in-law. Seeing Xiao Hua's concern, Jiuxia's heart was as sweet as honey. After she took the storage rings and scanned them with her elemental sense, she looked at Xiao Hua in shock and shouted, brother-in-law, you're a millionaire. So many good things. Are they all for me? And, of course, they're all for you. If it's not enough, I have more here. Xiao Hua said with a smile. No matter how he looked at Jiuxia, he was happy. Enough, enough. Jiuxia took out an immortal peach with a smile and ate it in big bites in front of Xiao Hua. She didn't even have time to wipe off the peach juice that splashed on her face. I forgot. Xiao Hua patted his head and took out a blood bead from the space and handed it to Jiuxia. This is also for you. What's this? Jiuxia didn't understand. However, when she took the blood bead and saw a nine-tailed fox's shadow inexplicably changing inside the blood bead, she couldn't help but cry out in shock. Nine-tailed fox bloodline? How is this possible? Brother-in-law went to the legacy realm. Xiao Hua said proudly, when I saw this bloodline, I thought of you, brother-in-law. Xiao! Jiuxia's body trembled. She didn't care about the falling immortal peach and flew over while shouting, you're really too good to me. Cough, cough. Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand and blocked her. Looking at Jiuxia's pink face and red lips, he swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said with a dry mouth, it's nothing. You and I are a family. Brother-in-law should do something for you. No. The more Xiao Hua acted like this, the more Jiuxia wanted to take advantage of him. She said coquettishly, you must give me a kiss. Otherwise, this little sister will feel apologetic. Brother-in-law is really too good to me. Go. Facing Jiuxia's coquettishly pouting, Xiao Hua suddenly felt that he had some resistance. He couldn't help but feel a sense of pride from the bottom of his heart. He waved his hand and said, if your sister knew, she would be angry. Jiuxia smiled faintly as if she saw a little rooster that she could secretly eat. She stopped and asked, brother-in-law, this little sister won't ask about other things. That Princess Zixia that you mentioned just now, Xiao Hua was dumbstruck. He looked at Jiuxia and shouted in the same inconceivable way, I didn't say anything. Brother-in-law. Jiuxia turned a blind eye and said with a smile, do you want to hide the matters of men from us women? Even if you didn't say anything, how could we not know? Damn it. Xiao Hua cursed in a low voice. Like a defeated rooster, he drooped his head. Even Jiuxia could see through it with a glance. How could Fairy Hongxia not see through it? Although Xiao Hua didn't intend to hide anything, seeing this situation, he was also quite disheartened. Brother-in-law. Looking at such a cute Xiao Hua, Jiuxia rolled her eyes and said, how about this, don't be in a hurry to find sister. First, you should clarify the matters of the 3 continents. After you have some clues, you can go find Sister to discuss it and tell her everything about Princess Xixia. Perhaps Sister is dissatisfied with you, but seeing you rushing about for the sake of the billions of people in the 3 continents, she wouldn't blame you too much, right? After her anger subsides and the immortal formation is broken, Fairy Hongxia and Princess Xixia will also meet. Wouldn't that be perfect? What do you think? P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support. Vote for a monthly vote. Vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, gift, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 5049. All right. Xiaohua obviously didn't know what Jiuxia was thinking. He could only nod and say, "Then I'll listen to you and not tell your sister about this." Xiaohua is so cute. He's already the supreme of the human race, yet he still cares so much about Fairy Hongxia's thoughts. Jiuxia couldn't help but laugh in her heart. If Ziming, Fairy Hongxia, and Princess Xixia were placed together, I wonder what kind of expression he would have. Alas, what a pity. Ziming is destined to be a sacrifice. My hope is probably still in the future, right? Thinking of this, Jiuxia was about to speak when Xiaohua urged her again. "Oh right, Jiuxia. While I'm here, you should fuse with that bloodline. Don't let anything go wrong when you fuse alone." Jiuxia smiled and said, "Brother-in-law, what bad idea are you thinking of now?" "What bad idea?" Xiaohua was stunned and said curiously, "Aren't I afraid something will happen to you? I'll help you guard." Brother-in-law, fusing with the bloodline is different from comprehending Xingyu. You have to be completely naked, Jiuxia said with a sly face. Cough, cough. When Xiaohua heard this, he naturally thought of the situation when Feng Wu achieved the holy bloodline. He hurriedly coughed and said, "Brother-in-law isn't from the demon race, so I don't know about this. Don't blame me." "Alas, brother-in-law," Jiuxia said with melancholy, "how good would it be if you came back a few years earlier?" That Xiaohua retreated and didn't dare to say anything more. He waved his hand and said, "Jiuxia, if you can fuse with the bloodline, do it as soon as possible. Brother-in-law still has things to do. Don't worry, brother-in-law." Jiuxia saw that she had loosened the reins only to grasp them better and didn't dare to make Xiaohua feel disgusted. She hurriedly nodded and said, "If it was before, I definitely wouldn't dare to rashly nod my head. But now, I've already comprehended the Green Hill 9 transformations. It can be said that the direction of cultivation is already stable. This bloodline is just a strong cornerstone that allows me to cultivate the Green Hill 9 transformations. Of course, I'm currently weak and don't dare to fuse with it easily. After a period of time, I'll find a secret place to fuse with the bloodline. There won't be any mistakes." "That's good." Xiaohua, who had already started to tidy up the capital star array, said, "If you feel unsafe, brother-in-law can give you some more." Xiaohua originally wanted to say the demonic beasts, but he suddenly remembered that the Kunlun mirror wasn't by his side, so he couldn't take out the demonic beast from his space. He immediately shut his mouth, but a moment later, he thought of another matter. Thus, Xiaohua stopped again and said helplessly, "Sai, brother-in-law is really old and forgetful. I almost forgot something just now. Could it be a surprise?" Jiuxia swallowed the 9-tailed fox bloodline and asked with a smile, "It's not much of a surprise. I just want you to help me see how I should deal with this fox clan." As Xiaohua spoke, he took out a spirit storage bag and took out the great demon who called himself Hu Qi from the Shenhua continent. Hu Mao came out and did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Great sage Xiao, why have you called me out?" Jiuxia was dumbstruck. She looked at Hu Qi in disbelief. Her little mouth was wide open. Xiaohua had given her too many surprises, so many that she couldn't even react. "Didn't this old man say before? I don't know your background, so I can't deal with you. Here, this is my little sister. Let's see how she deals with you." Xiaohua said flatly, his manner as dignified as a great sage of the human race. "Yes, this little one understands." Hu Qi did not dare to say anything else. He followed Xiaohua's gaze to Jiuxia. Hu Qi was immediately dumbfounded. However, he made a decision in an instant. He prostrated himself in the air and kowtowed. So it's Miss Jiao. This little one kowtows to Miss Jiao. Jiao Xiao was unmoved by Hu Qi's kowtow. She sneered and said, Hu Qiang, this world is really small. After thousands of years, you still fell into my hands. Back then, when you forced me to kill me, and when you joined the Snow Wolf King and told the Snow Wolf King all the secrets of the Qingqiu clan, you never thought that such a day would come. Even though he was called Hu Qi, he was actually called Hu Qiang. He prostrated himself in the air, but did not plead, and instead said flatly, Miss Jiao, I'm sure you know better than I do what the Qingqiu clan is like. Yesterday, I joined the 10,000 Demon Realms Great Sage of the Demon Race, and today, you joined the 10,000 Demon Realms Great Sage of the Human Race. You and I are both struggling at death's door, doing our best to continue the Qingqiu clan's bloodline. Back then, when I forced you to kill you, I was forced to do so by the Snow Wolf King. As for the secrets of the Qingqiu clan, don't worry, Miss Jiao. I won't tell anyone even if I die. At that, Hu Qiang even looked up slightly at Xiaohua. There was no telling if he was trying to sow discord or prove his worth. Seeing that both Xiaohua and Jiu Xia were silent, Hu Qiang continued, As for today, I won't say much since I've fallen into your hands. There's a saying among humans that the victor is king and the loser is a bandit. Since the great sage of the human race has handed me over to you, you may do as you please. There is no way Jiu Xia did not know what Hu Qiang was up to, and laughed coldly. Hu Qiang, if you didn't reveal Green Hill's secret, how would the Snow Wolf King know where I am, and why would she keep chasing me? Don't try to avoid the important and dwell on the trivial. There are many secrets of the Qingqiu clan, and if you reveal my whereabouts, you're revealing the secrets of the Qingqiu clan. Hu Qiang glanced coolly at Jiu Xia and smiled. If that's the case, Miss Jiao, it seems that you've revealed more secrets of the Qingqiu clan than I did. Damn it, Jiu Xia's face flushed. She knew that Hu Qiang was referring to the nine-tailed fox's corolla, and that he had mistakenly assumed that she had offered it to Xiaohua in exchange for protection. Jiu Xia wanted to retort, but she could not help blushing when she realized that Hu Qiang was speaking the truth. Moreover, the corolla's power did not completely vanish from Xiaohua's body, and as a member of the Qingqiu clan, Hu Qiang could tell at once. Jiu Xia could not retort. After some thought, Jiu Xia said, Hu Qiang, you're speaking the truth. After all, the Qingqiu clan is now in decline, and the death of another would weaken our bloodline by another notch. That's why I'm betting with your life, betting that I wouldn't kill you. From the bottom of my heart, I really don't want to kill you. It's not just because of your bloodline, but also because I need help. You're a member of the Qingqiu clan, and 100 times more suitable than other demon spirits. That's why congratulations, you've won the bet. Thank you, Miss Jiao. Hu Qiang's face did not show any joy, and instead kowtowed to express his gratitude. But Jiu Xia changed the topic. You're now a great demon, and far from being subdued by us, so I'll have to leave a seal on your body. Hu Qiang was not surprised, and nodded. Do as you wish, Miss Jiao. Brother-in-law. Jiu Xia smiled. I'll leave this to you. No problem. Xiaohua smiled, and opened his mouth. The chanting of gods and ghosts came out of his mouth, and 7 strange green runes appeared out of thin air. Hu Qiang's heart shuddered when he saw the runes appear, and an indescribable terror could not help but surge out, as if the 7 runes could easily send him into the underworld. Hu Qiang's fear did not stop there. Tens of thousands of soul strands grew out of Xiaohua's forehead, and like tentacles, the soul strands touched various parts of the runes at lightning speed. A moment later, an obscure fluctuation with an inexplicable soul power was born from 6 of the runes, and the 9 runes slowly transformed into 6 fist-sized green skeletons. Great sage. Hu Qiang could not help but whisper, You don't have to do this, do you? This humble one is from a side branch of the Qingqiu clan, and although my bloodline cannot compare to Miss Jiao's, but But since this humble one has pledged allegiance to Miss Jiao, it's better to be safe than sorry. Xiao Hua urged his soul technique, and his voice was like a ghost's. Following his cold snort, the 6 skeletons rushed to various parts of Hu Qiong's body. At the same time, the 7th rune began to spin, and a vortex as thin as the tip of a needle appeared at the center of the rune. As soon as the vortex appeared, an equally thin suction force appeared and fell on Hu Qiong's head. Whoosh whoosh. The suction force was as thin as a needle at first, but it grew stronger with a swishing sound and finally completely enveloped Hu Qiong. At the same time, the 6 skeletons that fell on Hu Qiong's body disappeared, and then a faint blood shadow was slowly pulled out of Hu Qiong's body by the suction force and was sucked into the rune. When the shadow fell into the rune shook violently, and waves of dark green light fell into the void. Xiao Hua raised his hand and pointed. Ha! The rune shattered, and a wisp of soul flame was born from within. Hu Qiong did not feel anything wrong, but when he looked at the wisp of soul flame, he had a strange feeling. It was as if he was divided into two, one standing here and the other standing in the wisp of soul flame, and both of them were looking at each other. Jiu Xia smiled and said, "Thank you, brother-in-law. With your soul-capturing technique, that old thing will have to listen to me for the rest of his life." Xiao Hua laughed. The wonder of this technique is not only that Hu Qiong's life is in your hands, but also that the power of the restrictive technique increases with your cultivation. If you don't have 10 times your power, don't even think about breaking it. Great sage, Hu Qiong could not help wailing softly. What are you afraid of? Jiu Xia glared at him. As long as you do your best for Qingqiu Mountain and don't betray me, it's no different from not having this restriction. Moreover, Hu Qiong, there are some things I can't tell you right now. This isn't just a restriction, it's also a test. As long as you pass the test, there will definitely be a place for you in Qingqiu Mountain in the future. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it, Qidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 50-50. How could Hu Qiong take Jiu Xia's words seriously? He only thought that it was an empty promise and smiled bitterly. Yes, I understand. Get up. Jiu Xia didn't explain. She waved her hand to indicate for Hu Qiong to stand up, and then she said to Xiao Hua, "Brother-in-law, little sister will take Hu Qiong over first. Little sister will notify brother-in-law once the matter of the immortal formation is settled." Okay. Xiao Hua smiled and kept the capital star array and the seal of Overturn the Sea. He said, "Thank you for your trouble. We're family, don't worry." Jiu Xia pursed her lips and smiled. This isn't the 10,000 demon realm? After the restriction was removed, Hu Qiong looked around and exclaimed in surprise. Jiu Xia glanced at him and said faintly, "Of course it's not the 10,000 demon realm. There's the Snow Wolf King in the 10,000 demon realm. How can I stay here? This is the Dawn Rain continent. There's no demon saint." But Hu Qiong wanted to say something, but when he looked at Xiao Hua, he hesitated. Xiao Hua glanced at him and did not ask more. He nodded at Jiu Xia and flew to the back earth stockade. After Xiao Hua left, Hu Qiong whispered, "Miss Jiu, when are we returning to the 10,000 demon realm? Why are we returning to the 10,000 demon realm?" Jiu Xia did not understand. Hu Qiong looked around and whispered, "Miss Jiu, I won't hide it from you. There's a reason why I joined the Snow Wolf King." "Oh, what's the reason?" Jiu Xia was surprised when she saw how mysterious Hu Qiong was. "Miss Jiu, please wait." Hu Qiong looked around worriedly and raised his hand to set up a restriction. He then took out a fox-shaped object and handed it to Jiu Xia. "Miss Jiu, what do you think this is?" "See." Jiu Xia saw the object and gasped. "Relic? Relic realm?" "That's right," Hu Qiong said respectfully. "This object was originally in the hands of the Snow Wolf King in the 10,000 demon realm. I joined the Snow Wolf King for this object. Unfortunately, After I obtained it, I was captured by the great sage of the human clan before I could find the entrance from the 10,000 demon realm to the legacy realm. Now that I have pledged my allegiance to Lady Geo, I shall offer this item to Lady Geo to show my loyalty. When Jiuxia received the Fox clan's inherited demon artifact, his heart was as clear as fire. Hu Qiong must have already been to the legacy world. Furthermore, Xiao Hua must have taken away the bloodline before Hu Qiong arrived at the legacy world. Otherwise, Hu Qiong wouldn't have given the inherited demon artifact to him so easily. However, Jiuxia was still ecstatic when she received it. She hurriedly asked, "Since you're in a hurry to return to the 10,000 demon realm, don't tell me you haven't found the entrance from the 10,000 demon realm to the legacy realm." "I did find some clues, but I can't be sure," Hu Qiong said as he handed over something that looked like an animal skin and said, "If Miss Geo has the chance to return to the 10,000 demon realm, I will accompany Miss Geo to find it." "All right." Jiuxia took the bee skin and looked at it. With a smile on her face, she said, "If I get it, I will definitely give you half of it." "Many thanks to Miss Geo." Hu Qiong was also happy and hurriedly bowed. Almost at the same time, Hu Qiong and Jiuxia laughed in their hearts. This was because they both knew that the inherited demon artifact of the Fox clan could no longer be used. Even if they found the entrance to the legacy world, it was impossible for them to enter. Moreover, they both knew that in the legacy world, there was no Fox clan's true bloodline. Xiao Huan naturally didn't know the thoughts of the Fox clan. He was now close to the Empress Earth stronghold. Huang Tong, who imprisoned the Snow Wolf, had just returned. She stood beside Xiao Hua and looked at the undulating mountain range in the distance. She whispered, "Fellow cultivator, I imprisoned the Snow Wolf in a secret place underground. If there is no special opportunity, no one will find it. Of course, I didn't set up any special restrictions in that secret place. In the future, someone will find it. And fellow Taoist, you've done well." Xiao Hua nodded. Although she's imprisoned, there's always a way out. When someone discovers the Snow Wolf, that'll be the moment she escapes. If it was I who did it earlier, why would I let her live?" Huang Tong sneered. Taoist, which also stood on the other side. He looked into the distance and asked, "Fellow cultivator, how confident are you in reviving midnight? Why don't you let I do it? If fellow cultivator does it, it's naturally the best," Xiao Hua said with a serious face. At this moment, rain had begun to fall from the millions of Meng Mountains. The heavy dark clouds were like the bottom of the Milky Way, suddenly leaking out. The rain poured down like a waterfall, slowly covering the entire heaven and earth. Layers of water vapor rose from the mountain range, blocking Xiao Hua's eyes and covering his heart. After a while, Xiao Hua said, "If it was before, I would do the same. However, since Ziming can't escape, and Ai's son is the new shaman king, if I don't do it for my son, how can I face Ziming? Therefore, it's better for I to do it this time. Some things are natural, and some things are inevitable." Huang Tong sighed. If it was before, fellow cultivator would be modest. However, for the sake of your son, even if it's just a little bit of face, fellow cultivator has to fight for it. Xiao Hua nodded. There's a saying in the human race. You don't know the kindness of your parents until you're a parent. Until now, I suddenly felt the helpless feeling of my master that day, the feeling of being disappointed in me for not becoming steel. The feeling of breaking your own gold core and feeding it to I. It's time to go back to the myriad Thunder Valley. Huang Tong naturally felt the misery in Xiao Hua's heart. She squeezed out a smile and said, "Fellow cultivator took away the immortal slaying platform in the myriad Thunder Valley. I wonder what's the situation in the Imperial Thunder sect now. Since I've returned to the Dawn Rain continent, all the karma will be settled." Xiao Hua was anxious to return home, but when he really set foot on the Dawn Rain continent, he was actually afraid of returning home. He looked in the direction of the Imperial Thunder sect and said, "Let's wait for I to settle them one by one." "Okay." Huang Tong nodded and said, "Previously, fellow cultivator left alone. Now, we'll accompany fellow cultivator back in a grand manner. Isn't it just like that sentence?" Good will be rewarded with good, and evil will be punished with evil. It's not that there's no karma. It's just that the time hasn't come yet. He, Taoist, which also said, when the time comes, those who have a grudge will take revenge. Those who have a grudge will take revenge. Ha ha. That's right. Huang Tong laughed and followed Taoist, which into the space. Yes, those who have a grudge will take revenge. Those who have a grudge will take revenge. Xiao Hua spoke in a low voice as the lightning of the three corpses surged around him. He released his shaman body and urged his figure to charge towards Empress Earth Stronghold. His voice still lingered in the rain, and it resounded out like thunder. Now's the time. Hutu Stronghold was still the same Hutu Stronghold. Hundreds of years of time couldn't leave any marks on this shaman stronghold. However, the surroundings of Hutu Stronghold were different from when Xiao Hua and the others came. The mountain range and between the foothills were full of millets. Although it was raining and the millet stalks were swaying with the wind, they were still very strong and didn't fall down. Some of the millet grains had been blown into the flowing water, but there was no need to worry. Wherever the millet grains fell, there would be new millet grains growing. Xiao Hua's virtue had truly supported the lives of millions of Meng Mountain's natives. In the back mountain of Hutu Stronghold, inside the bone palace that was built with bones and skeletons, the statue of Hutu, great god, stood there like a mountain. However, this time, the statue was different from before. One side of the statue glowed with an extremely bright green halo. Within the halo, wisps of blood flickered. In particular, the bloody waves of the Nether Blood Sea were reflected in the void from time to time as the wisps of blood flickered. On the other side of the statue, there was a withered tree that looked like an ancient tree. No light could be seen, and there were many green characters that looked like they were dead engraved on it. Around the statue of Hutu, great god, all the elders of the 12 shaman strongholds were kneeling down. Behind them, there were 99 elders of the upper stronghold and 360 elders of the lower stronghold. These soul cultivators, and shamans of different ages and appearances were all putting their foreheads on the ground with a pious look on their faces, while chanting something in a low voice. The strange rhythm lasted for a long time in the Bone Palace. Under the rhythm, the light of Hutu, great god, would flicker from time to time, and occasionally the statue of Hutu, great god, would even let out a hoarse noise, while tiny whirlpools that looked like swimming fishes would appear on a roof of the Bone Palace. However, the statue of Hutu, great god, that looked like an ancient tree didn't shine at all. The elder of Rushu Stronghold was an old man whose face had turned blue. His name was Jixing, and his forehead was also touching the ground with a thoughtful look in his eyes. However, at this moment, he slightly tilted his head and saw a young man standing not far away from him. The young man was tall and sturdy, and his skin was naturally covered in tiny water ripples. As the young man was chanting, the water ripples moved slightly, and wisps of watery light flowed out from the ripples. This young man was none other than Nuo Lin, the elder of Gonggong Stronghold. Jixing remained silent for a while, then sent a message to Nuo Lin with a low voice. Nuo Lin, I have something to ask you. Nuo Lin paused briefly, then stopped chanting. She didn't respond, but looked around, then sent a message back to Jixing. Jixing, can't you tell me after the praying ceremony? Of course not. Jixing responded, I want to ask you about the praying ceremony. Nuo Lin was impatient, so she urged, just say it. Jixing chuckled and asked, Nuo Lin, let me ask you, how long does a praying ceremony usually take? Nuo Lin frowned and responded, how am I supposed to know? This is the first time for me to take part in a praying ceremony. What about the records in your Gonggong Stronghold's Magus Codex? Asked Jixing in a meaningful tone. I don't know. Nuo Lin responded straightforwardly. I didn't read the Magus Codex. P.S. My friends who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, recommend it, collect it, or give it as a reward. Chapter 5051. I've read it. Jixue responded. I especially read it before I came to Hutu village. Why did you read the Magus Code? No, Mo asked curiously. When the Magus King ordered us to come to Huta village, he didn't say anything about returning to the arms of Huta God. How do you know that he'll go to the netherworld? Nuo Mo. Ji Shui sighed and said, Jianji and a young Ji-man from Hutu village went to Wushan Mountain tens of years ago. About 14 years ago, that young Ji-man lived in Magus King village alone and never walked out of Wushan Mountain in the past 10 years. Oh, really? Nuomo paused and said, if so, it's possible. What do you mean it's possible? The Magus King has already returned to the arms of Huta God. Ji Shui sneered and said, besides, I'm telling you, 100 years ago, the Magus King sent a Magus to Huta village and searched around 10,000 miles around Huta village. It's meaningless to talk about this. Nuo, Mo said impatiently. You're just giving advice after the fact. The Magus King told us to wait in Huta village, and he has already gone to the netherworld. You're right. The problem now is, why hasn't the new Magus King shown up yet? Only half of Hutu God in Hutu village has woken up, and half of the gods in the other 11 villages must have woken up as well. What should we do now? We've been praying for a whole day and night, but why hasn't the new Magus King shown up yet? Needless to say, Ji Shui said blandly, something must have happened when the new Magus King was born. Otherwise, it wouldn't take so long. According to the Magus Code of our Rushu village, the Magus Code of our Rushu village shows that a god-praying priest takes about a meal, and the longest one lasts 2 hours. What should we do? Nuo, Mo from Gong Gong village was startled, and even forgot to send a spiritual power to Ji Shui. Ji Ju was stunned. He glared fiercely at Nuo Bu, regretting that he should not have spoken to this straightforward Elder Wu. However, it was fine. Not only Ji Ming and Nana, even Jianji and the other elders were confused. However, they didn't dare to stop the ritual without a reason. Nuo Fu's scream happened at the right time. Everyone stopped the ritual. Jianji even coughed and asked, Ahem, Nuo Fu, what are you doing? What's the matter? Jianji, let me ask you, where's your G-man? Nuo Bu asked directly. Oh, Zimming is accompanying the Shaman King in the Shaman King village. Jianji didn't conceal anything and replied. Then, Nuo Bu seemed to be organizing her words. She thought for a moment and asked, why hasn't the new Shaman King appeared? Is this related to Zimming? This. Jianji slightly shook his head, gave a bitter smile and said, I don't know either. I'm afraid that we can only wait for Zimming to come back and ask him. Jianji, Jiju asked, before I came here, I read the Magus book of our Rushu village. Normally, a god's praying ritual lasts for half an hour. Today's god's praying ritual, is it too long? Jinji nodded and said, I'm confused too. I think you all have the same feeling as me. If I'm not mistaken, something must have happened in the Shaman King village. Even though Jinji was straightforward, he didn't dare to say that something had happened to the new Shaman King in the ancestral hall of Hutu village. However, Jinji was different. He knew something about the new Shaman King, and this was Hutu village. Nevertheless, once Jinji said that, everyone in the bone-setting hall started whispering, just like a firecracker being set off by a spark. Everyone couldn't help but express their doubts. Jinji didn't stop them. Instead, he let them whisper. After a long while, the hall finally quieted down. Jinji, Panju, the elder of Zhurong village, said, What the hell is going on? Now that the Shaman King asked us to gather in Hutu village, he must have made some arrangement. Hurry, tell us. Without any hesitation, Jinji said, I don't know what arrangement the Shaman King has made, but I can tell you about his arrangement. All right, all the elder magi urged, hurry up and tell us. Perhaps we could find the new Shaman King together. Closely after that, Jinji told them about the arrangement of the Shaman King. Finally, he said, the Shaman King knew that the new Shaman King would be born in Hutu village. Therefore, he asked you to come here. He even asked Zimming to go to Shaman King village. However, I don't know why the new Shaman King hasn't appeared yet. Let's go. Feng Ji said without hesitation. It's meaningless for us to stay in Hotu village. Let's go to Shaman King village as soon as possible. But, Jianji said with a bitter smile, without the order of the Shaman King, we couldn't enter Shaman God Ridge. The Shaman King has returned to the Netherworld. There's no old Shaman King's order in this world. If we follow this order, we couldn't find the trace of the new Shaman King. Jinji added, additionally, if the new Shaman King couldn't be born, we couldn't wait for the new Shaman King's order. Therefore, we couldn't enter Shaman God Ridge anymore. Everything that happened in Shaman King Village would become a mystery. Yes, we have to go to Shaman King Village, even if we violate the order of the ancestor. Jian Feng, the shaman of Shuhai Village, said without hesitation, otherwise, the new Shaman King couldn't appear. But we broke into Shaman King Village without the order of the Shaman King. Jianji said after being hesitant, it's a big crime. If we die, I'm afraid that we couldn't even return to the embrace of the Hota God. In a split second, all the others became silent. Everyone, seeing the dead silence in the hall, Jinji thought for a while and said, since the Shaman King asked you to gather in Hotu village, I should take responsibility for this matter. You wait here, I'll go to Shaman God Ridge now. How can that be? Ruo Jianji immediately shouted before Jianji could finish his words. If you want to go, I'll go with you. You're the son of the Hota God, but am I not the son of the Gonggong God? If you can't return to the embrace of the Hota God, I'll accompany you. I'll go too. Jianji of Rushu village said with a smile. The great god Rushu is the most benevolent. If the Hotu God doesn't accept us, we'll go find the great god Rushu. Humph! The other shaman elders snorted and shouted. We're all the sons of the 12 great gods. Why can't we go? Jinji felt warm in his heart when he heard the 11 elders of sorcerers' words. Although there were many conflicts and even wars between the villages, when it came to the most critical moment, everyone remembered that they were the descendants of the 12 great sorcerer and had the bloodline of the sorcerer in their bodies. With such unity, what difficulties could they not overcome? We'll go with you to Shaman King Village. Hundreds of shaman elders from other villages said in unison. I'm sure the Hotu God won't refuse to let us go, right? Jinji laughed and said, in that case, we'll all go. However, we don't all have to go to Shaman God Ridge. I'll send a message to Zimming and find out the situation first. What do you think? Okay. The shaman elders nodded and said, let's do that. Since the shaman elders had made up their minds, they didn't waste any time. They all flew out of the Bone Palace and prepared to leave in the heavy rain. At this moment, a chilly wind suddenly blew over from a distance away, covering the entire Hotu village within a moment. Jinji's bone phoenix was about to spread its wings, but at this moment, it trembled and retracted its wings. Its entire skeleton was shaking while making a creaking noise. Then it shrunk into a ball. Not to mention the bone phoenix, even the mounts of the other shaman elders had all huddled up and retracted their heads into their wings, daring not to stick their heads out. Who? Jianji and the other shaman elders were all shocked. They couldn't believe it, and Jianji couldn't help but shout. Swoosh! As Jianji's probing sound landed, an overwhelming aura surged over. Wherever this aura passed, the dark clouds in the sky rolled, and the rain between the heavens and the earth was swept away. It was as if it was a sunny day, and the mountains and plains were filled with a kind of freshness. When this sense of power descended and covered all the shaman elders, the shaman elder of Gonggong village couldn't help but shout out in shock. This is the will of the supreme shaman. Well, what's going on? Jianji was also greatly shocked. He held back the fear that involuntarily rose in his heart and rushed into the sky, yelling, the will of the supreme Magus is twice as strong as that of the Magus King. How is this possible? Whoa. Before Jinji could fly a few dozen feet further from the source of the aura, countless huge green seal script characters shot up into the sky. When the green seal script characters disappeared, a series of voices of gods and ghosts could be heard. The gloomy clouds that had covered millions of Meng mountains a moment ago were wiped away like a pair of giant hands, revealing the blue sky. Right in the middle of the sky, a crimson-red sun was revealed, shining its warm sunlight onto the damp and gloomy millions of Meng Mountains. The gloomy atmosphere of the Shaman King's death was instantly swept away. Amidst the sunlight, a supreme shaman, who was thousands of feet tall, flew over while stepping on thunderbolts. Although the appearance of this supreme shaman couldn't be seen clearly, the pure body of the supreme shaman and the green seal characters that looked like flood dragons around him and the soul strands all revealed the identity of this supreme shaman. Shaman King. Not only Jianji, even the hundreds of shaman elders had the same thought in their minds. This is the new Shaman King. Jianji and the other shamans didn't dare to hesitate. Hastily, they kneeled down in midair and shouted, "We greet the Shaman King." After saying that, they crossed their arms in front of their chests and knelt down. However, out of their expectation, an irresistible force came out like a tidal wave and blocked them. At the same time, a thunderous voice was heard. "I'm not your new Shaman King. Your new Shaman King hasn't been born yet. P.S. For all my fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it. Vote for it. Give it a recommendation vote, bookmark it, or tip it. Thank you for your tip, little Jian. Chapter 5052. Along with the voice, the god of sorcerers' human form landed in front of them. Xiao Hua Daoist Xiao. The green light around the god of sorcerer retracted, revealing Xiao Hua's appearance. Although it had been a few hundred years, Jianji still recognized Xiao Hua at first glance. He was shocked, and, after a moment of daze, he exclaimed, "Yes, it's really me." Xiao Hua smiled and retracted his god of sorcerer's avatar, which gradually returned to its original size. However, he didn't retract his avatar. You. Shibai Village's Shaman Zhumin naturally also recognized Xiao Hua. However, he didn't associate the shaman god in front of him with the little cultivator from before. Only when Xiao Hua personally admitted it did he belatedly call out, "You're really Xiao Hua? How is this possible?" "Nothing is impossible." Xiao Hua looked at the other elders and asked, "What are you waiting for? Who is Taoist Xiao?" Zhumin recognized Xiao Hua, but the other elders didn't. Even though some of them had seen Xiao Hua in the Bone Palace before and wanted to ask, facing Xiao Hua's god of sorcerer's aura, which was even stronger than that of a Shaman King, they couldn't even breathe. So how could they ask? "Taoist Xiao." Jianji didn't dare to neglect and quickly answered, "Millions of Shaman Kings of Meng Mountain have returned to the embrace of great goddess Hutu, but a new Shaman King hasn't been born yet. We want to go to Shaman Ridge to find out." "You don't have to go." Xiao Hua understood and waved his hand. "I just came out from Shaman Ridge. I know what happened." "Taoist Xiao, is this true?" Jianji asked in disbelief. Xiao Hua nodded. "If not, why would Zimming go to Shaman Ridge?" Oh. Every elders had different reactions, and their thoughts were also different. However, Xiao Hua didn't explain too much. He looked around at the elders and said indifferently, "I left early, so I don't know the details. But you don't have to worry. Everything is under the arrangement of the Shaman King." Earlier, these Magus elders were still a bit suspicious of Xiao Hua, who was a stranger to them. But when they heard Xiao Hua call out the Magus King's name, all their doubts disappeared. Except for the Magus elders of the 12 Magus villages, even the Magus elders of the 99 Magus villages couldn't possibly know the Magus King's name. "Jinren Xiao, what's going on?" Nua Yi of Gonggong Village asked cautiously. Xiao Hua looked around and said with a smile, "Are we going to talk here? Do you want to listen to all of them?" Jianji came to his senses and hurriedly bowed. "Spiritual Master, this way, please." Although it was still Xiao Hua, Jianji no longer dared to treat Xiao Hua as a little cultivator. His face was full of respect. "Wait." After taking a few steps forward, Xiao Hua suddenly turned his head around and looked at the group of shaman elders in the upper and lower strongholds, saying, "Millions of Shaman Kings of Meng Mountains will return to the 9 underworlds, and this is the day of sacrifice for the soul cultivators. How dare you demons come here and disturb us? How audacious! Along with this voice, 20 or so thunder of 3 corpses transformed into sharp swords and shot towards the 20 or so shaman elders at lightning speed. Illo! Under the attack of the thunder of 3 corpses, the 20 or so shaman elders all fell to the ground while howling. Clouds of dim devil energy surged out, and the demons and the devil energy were killed by the thunder of 3 corpses before they could even show themselves. Damn it! Seeing this, Jianji couldn't help but become furious. He shouted, "There are actually demons in the midst of the god-praying ceremony. Where's the face of our Hutu village?" Men, elders of the 12 shaman villages, quickly investigate the origins of these shaman elders and rush to these shaman villages. If you find anything inappropriate, immediately kill them. Sigh demons, they are really everywhere. Xiao Hua sighed slightly. Although he had a clone that was also a demon lord, he was still a demon lord. The other shaman elders should stay here as well. Don't leave first. Xiao Hua thought for a while and said, "Wait until I finish explaining the reason for this matter. Then you all can make a decision." Yes, Taoist. The divine abilities displayed by Xiao Hua were indeed powerful, and these divine abilities were all soul cultivation divine abilities. The group of Elder Wu was convinced, and they all nodded their heads carefully as they spoke. Everyone surrounded Xiao Hua and entered the Bone Palace. Xiao Hua stood in front of the Hutu great god statue and looked around. He sighed and said, "The Bone Palace is still the same Bone Palace. The Hutu great god is still the same, but the people standing here have changed a lot." Hearing this, Jianji's face changed slightly. He said anxiously, "Taoist, you mean? It's fine. You 12 shaman elders are all real shaman elders. Don't worry about this." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "If there was anything inappropriate, I would have already made a move." Phew! Jianji let out a long breath and said with a smile, "That's good. If they were also invaded by the demons, then it would be troublesome. We are all descendants of the 12 great gods. How can the demons occupy us?" Nuabu said with disdain. "You are wrong." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "There are also Taoist cultivators who are several times more powerful than you and have also practiced the soul cultivation technique." "There are Taoist cultivators who are more powerful than me?" Nuabu was stunned. "And they have also practiced the soul cultivation technique? How is that possible?" Xiao Hua looked at Nuabu and asked, "Do you know what is on the other side of $1 Million Mang Mountain?" "Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance." Nuabu answered without hesitation, "A very powerful Taoist alliance." "Why, are you talking about the Taoist experts of Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance?" Xiao Hua nodded and said, "You are right and wrong." Nuabu asked curiously, "What do you mean by that? What do you mean by right and wrong?" "Because that expert is on the other side of $1 Million Mang Mountain. However, the Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance you mentioned is only one of the 72 immortal alliances of the Heaven Alliance, and it is the weakest one," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "In addition, I also want to tell you that other than the Heaven Alliance, there is also a Tao Alliance. This Tao Alliance has 81 immortal alliances, and each of them is more powerful than the Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance." Hiss! Jianji came to a realization, took a deep breath, and said, "Taoist Xiao, so you've been going to Meng Mountain all these years?" "Yes." Xiao Huan nodded and answered, "Don't think that soul cultivation is very unique. No matter how unique it is still a cultivation method. Once there is a flaw, it will still be taken advantage of by the devil race. A devil general can't take over your body, but what about a devil commander? If you're really useful, then what about a devil emperor?" Cough, cough. Nuabu said embarrassedly, "If a devil emperor comes, why would he need to take over my body? He can just kill me directly." Jianji sighed and said, "That's right. Our soul cultivation is somewhat similar to your Taoist sect. Our shaman strongholds are not very lucky. Many soul cultivation techniques had already been lost. Now, the Shaman King has entered the Netherworld, and the new Shaman King is missing. Just thinking about it makes me worried." "The new Shaman King is not missing. Xiao Hua said indifferently. The new Shaman King is just not born in $1,000,000 Mang Mountain. What? Not born in $1,000,000 Mang Mountain? Then where is the new Shaman King? Jianji cried out in shock. Of course it's in Mang Mountain. Xiao Hua said smilingly. The Yilin continent ruled by the Heaven Alliance and the Dao Alliance. How is that possible? Not only Jianji, all the other shaman elders felt it was inconceivable. This is the arrangement of the Shaman King. Xiao Hua explained without hiding anything. Because he thinks the new Shaman King is more suitable to be born there. Jianji looked at all the shaman elders, then asked Xiao Hua. We know the Shaman King must have his reasons for making such an arrangement. But the problem is, there are innate restrictive spells in the depths of $1,000,000 Mang Mountain. If we can't go there with our cultivation bases, when will the new Shaman King be able to return to $1,000,000 Mang Mountain? Without the Shaman King, can't you all survive in $1,000,000 Mang Mountain? Xiao Hua asked. Can't you all reorganize your soul cultivation and prepare to welcome the new Shaman King? Reverend, Jianji was puzzled and answered, How can we reorganize our soul cultivation? Without the Shaman King, where should we go? Who can give us guidance? At this point, Jianji's eyes lit up, and he quickly said, Reverend, are you? I'm not. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, The Shaman King has passed away. Originally, he wanted me to be the next Shaman King, but I'm going to ascend soon, and I don't have time to help you. Ascend? All the shaman elders looked at each other, and finally had an accurate estimation of Xiao Hua's strength. But I've been entrusted by the 12 great gods to bring you these. Xiao Hua took out a Chinquan bag, and with a wave of his hand, many bones and other items flew out, landing in front of Jianji and the other shaman elders. This is... Jianji was puzzled, so he casually took one of them. When he scanned it with his soul sense, he was stunned. Then, he hurriedly released his soul sense and scanned the other bones. Finally, he looked up at Xiao Hua excitedly and said, Reverend, these are the divine abilities bestowed to us by the great god Hutu. Where did you get them? That's right, these are the divine abilities of our great god. All the other shaman elders shouted with wild joy, and most of them have been lost. As these shaman elders shouted, they had already grasped the bones in front of them. Although they hadn't put them into their soul bags yet, they were sure that even if the Shaman King was standing in front of them, they wouldn't let go of these bones so easily. Xiao Hua said slowly, It doesn't matter where I got them. What matters is these divine abilities of the great gods originally belonged to you shaman elders. What I'm doing is just following the order of the 12 great gods to return these divine abilities to you shaman elders. Perhaps I didn't understand the meaning of the 12 great gods before, but today, seeing that the new Shaman King hasn't been born yet, and the old Shaman Kings have already returned to the great gods' embrace, how could I not know what the great gods are thinking? That's right. Jianji suddenly realized what Xiao Hua was talking about, and quickly shouted, The 12 great gods have already predicted the changes in Mang Mountains, and were afraid that we would fall apart. Therefore, they specially bestowed the divine abilities of the 12 shaman villages, allowing us to restore the glory of soul cultivators and welcome the arrival of the new Shaman King. P.S. For all the fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, bookmark it, and give it a tip. Chapter 5053. After saying that, Jianji immediately knelt down in front of the statue of Hutu, great god, kowtowed and said, Boy understands Hutu, great god's will. Boy will now bestow the divine ability to the descendants of great god to cultivate. When the new Shaman King returns, he will lead us back to glory. Seeing this, Xiao Hua also knelt down and said, Junior Xiao Hua, reporting to Hutu, great god. Junior was lucky enough to escape from the Buddhist formation. Now, I want to report to Hutu, great god, that the new Shaman King Ming has entered the cycle of reincarnation. I hope great god can grant him a safe reincarnation and be born in Yilin continent. When he returns to Mount Ming in the future, he will lead millions of soul cultivators back to glory. Shaman King Ming, Jianji, and others were even more delighted when they heard this. They all knelt down in front of Hutu, great god, kowtowing and praying. It was also strange. As they prayed, although the statue on one side of Hutu, great god, didn't emit a dark green luster, strands of thread-like life force slowly filled it. The exuberant life force began to spread in the shrine of the god of the netherworld. Ha ha ha! Jianji and others laughed. Their previous worries were swept away. Xiao Hua stood up with everyone and said, "There's a saying in Xiaoyu continent that a jade can't be made into a treasure if it's not cut, and a man can't be made into a talent if he's not sharpened." Although there were many twists and turns in the birth of Shaman King Ming, it was precisely this sharpening that allowed him to become a far-sighted leader. Yes, yes. The group of elders nodded in agreement again. But after agreeing, Nuobu asked, "Reverend, I haven't seen the Shaman King recently, but I really don't understand. Why must the new Shaman King be born in Yilan continent? Can't Xiaoyu continent do the same?" Xiao Hua didn't know if he should tell them about the Buddhist formation, but if he didn't, he couldn't explain why Zi Ming didn't return from Shaman King's stronghold. So, he thought for a while and asked Vu, "Have you seen the Shaman King?" "Of course." Nuobu felt strange. She looked at the other elders and said, "I've seen all of them. What does the Shaman King look like?" Although Xiao Hua didn't know what the Shaman King's soul looked like, he still asked, "What do you mean, Reverend?" Jianji was confused and asked, "Could it be that the Magus Kings you met were different from ordinary human beings?" "That's right." Xiao Hua nodded. With a flick of his finger, the image of the Shaman King with a human face and a dragon tail appeared. "Nameless God?" Jianji and the other elder Wu cried out involuntarily. "Why does the Shaman King look like the 13th nameless great god?" "This is the true face of the Shaman King," Xiao Hua indifferently said. "What you all saw was merely his soul body, or perhaps it called a soul shadow." When he spoke up here, Xiao Hua paused for a moment before continuing. "Of course, all of you can also say that what all of you saw was the Shaman King's true body, and what I saw was merely the Shaman King's shaman body. Then where did Taoist Xiao meet the Shaman King?" Ji Feng of the Rushu stronghold had already calculated, and now he asked, "Could it be that it's not the Witch King's stronghold of the Witch God Ridge?" "That's right. It's not the Shaman King village of a Shaman God Ridge." Xiao Hua nodded and said, "It's in a sealed space." "Suppressed space? How is that possible?" Ji Feng of the Rushu stronghold cried out in shock again. "You're saying that the Shaman Kings of our Meng Mountain were actually suppressed? It doesn't matter if you believe it or not." Xiao Hua knew that the elder Wu might not be able to accept it, so he indifferently said, "That's the truth. I saw it with my own eyes." Then Zimming. Jianji realized that something was wrong and hastily asked, "Zimming is also in that sealed space. Before the new Shaman King returns, I'm afraid she won't be able to escape." Xiao Hua nodded and said, "Then how did Taoist Xiao escape?" Ji Feng of the Rushu stronghold asked. Xiao Hua took a deep look at Ji Feng of the Rushu stronghold and answered, "Because the sealed space is suppressing someone related to the replacement of the old Shaman King, and I'm not. Taoist Xiao isn't." Ji Feng of the Rushu stronghold was startled. "I'm talking about someone related to the replacement of the old Shaman King." Xiao Hua felt helpless, so he explained word by word. "I have nothing to do with the replacement of the old Shaman King." "I see." Xiao Hua's denial actually meant another kind of acknowledgement, and all the elder Wu suddenly understood. "Taoist," Jianji of the Gonggong stronghold begged, "can you tell us a little bit about the sealed space? We really didn't expect that the Shaman King had been sealed and suppressed all this time." Xiao Hua nodded. On the way here, he had already thought it through clearly. Other than concealing the fact that the sealing array was a Buddhist array, he had also explained the majority of the matters regarding the sealing array, as well as the reason why the Shaman King had chosen to let Shaman Wang Ming descend to the Yilan continent. After Xiao Hua finished speaking, the entire Hutu great gods worshipping temple fell into complete silence. No one was willing to speak. The Elder Wu of the 12 shaman strongholds had always thought highly of themselves. They felt that they were tens of thousands of times better than the Dao cultivators and sword cultivators of the Dawnrain continent. But only now did they understand the sadness behind the glory. The Shaman King, whom they regarded as a god, their leader, was actually sealed by a formation since he was born. For the sake of the inheritance of soul cultivators, the generations of shaman kings had always endured humiliation to survive and had never leaked any information about this. When these shaman kings were living freely in the millions of Meng Mountains, the shaman kings had to face the endless darkness. Shaman King Jianji of the Gonggong stronghold prostrated himself on the ground and cried out with his head buried in the ground. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have forced you. Now, I finally understand your difficulties. It's all my fault. I deserve to die. I deserve to die." Jianji of the Gonggong stronghold didn't tell them what his mistake was, but judging from his remorseful expression, he had a deep understanding of his mistake. With Gonggong stronghold in such a state, how could the other Elder Wu still remain standing? They all kneeled down in shame, including Jianji. Apart from kowtowing, the rest was the remorse in their hearts. But too bad, the tears would always come later. They could only wash away the dust on their faces, but could never wash away the remorse in their hearts. After a full hour, Xiao Hua finally opened his mouth and said, "Everyone, please rise. The past is the past, and the present is happening now. Only the future is something we can change. Put away the remorse in your hearts. Let the tears flow into your mouths. Let yourself taste this bitterness, and turn this bitterness into a preparation for the Shaman King." The Shaman King said it well. "Bright, the sun and the moon are above. The light of the world is shining brightly. Wherever the bright returns, the millions of Meng Mountains will shine brightly. You all need to do your job well, lead your mega stronghold and your subordinates well, and cultivate well with the gift of the 12 gods. In the future, the millions of Meng Mountains will no longer be the same as today, and the soul cultivators will bring glory to the entire 4 continents. Thank you for your advice, Shaman Father." At this moment, all the elders had risen to their feet, and Jianji took the opportunity to bow and say, "If not for Shaman Father's message, we would still be in the dark." "Shaman Father?" Xiao Hua was taken aback, then waved his hand and said, "That's the honorific title of the Shaman King, and I don't deserve it. I think it's better to call you Reverend Xiao." Actually, Jianji looked around and said in a low voice, "Reverend, we soul cultivators don't have any ascension. If Reverend is still worried, you can give up your cultivation base of Dao League and just be the Shaman Father of soul cultivators." "Huh?" Xiao Hua was shocked. He stared at Jianji and said in disbelief, "You all the soul cultivators can't ascend?" Jianji shrugged and answered with a helpless and bitter expression, "Of course, if you don't believe me, Reverend, you can ask the other elders. I've never heard of any shaman ascending from millions of Meng Mountains, and there's no record of this in the shaman book of Hutu Stronghold." "Damn it," Xiao Hua cursed in a low voice. "I should have asked the Shaman King about this." Then Xiao Hua looked at the other elders. Sure enough, all the other elders shook their heads and said there was no record of this. "Fellow Taoist," Xiao Hua was surprised, but he quickly asked Taoist Wu in his mind, "Is there any record of this in the inheritance of soul cultivators in the 3 continents? What do you think?" Taoist Wu was also surprised and answered, "Fellow Taoist, there's no record of ascension in the inheritance of soul cultivators, but there's a saying that soul cultivators will return to the embrace of the gods. Returning to the Hutu great god means entering the netherworld, but what about returning to the other gods? It doesn't necessarily mean that they will die. Besides, I also have the feeling of ascension, just like all of you. But to be specific, my situation is similar to that of old man Guqiang. I only have the feeling, but I can't find the door of ascension, so I don't know where to go." "I understand." Xiao Hua frowned and answered, "There are 3 possibilities. First, the ascension of soul cultivators is different from that of Taoists. They don't necessarily leave the Dawn Rain continent with their physical bodies. Second, the cultivation base of the millions of shamans in Ming Mountains is too weak. Because of the loss of their inheritance, none of them can ascend, so there's no record of this. Third, the existence of the Buddhist formation on Mount Meru has blocked the ascension passage of soul cultivators, so soul cultivators can't ascend. But Taoist Wu was a little worried. Fellow Taoist, you're about to ascend. What should I do? That's troublesome. Xiao Hua pondered for a moment and said, It'll be good if you can ascend. But if you can't, do you have to stay on the Dawn Rain continent? Or do you have to enter the space and follow I to the immortal world? I have two plans. Taoist Wu made a decision. It'll be best if I can ascend. If I can't, I'll either stay on the Wuming Mountains or stay with the Fortune Gate's disciples. If that's the case, why don't you be my father? Xiao Hua was moved and said, My descendants will also be your descendants. Good. Taoist Wu nodded in agreement. Xiao Hua reached an agreement with Taoist Wu and said to Jinji, To tell you the truth, the Shaman King had the intention of making I the Shaman King when he passed away. He also misunderstood that I was the new Shaman King. But he was wrong, and I didn't agree to be the Shaman King. There's one more thing. When I returned from the other side of the Wuming Mountains, I met a shaman who was even more powerful than I. This shaman was called Taoist Wu. Taoist Wu followed I to the Wuming Mountains, but he couldn't show himself in the Space Seal. So, I didn't dare to reveal his whereabouts. When he left the Space Seal, he said that he was going to find the origin of the 12 great gods, so he left first. Vote for it. Vote for it. Give it a recommendation vote. Collect it, tip it, and... Chapter 50-54. Having said that, Xiao Hua suddenly raised his head and looked at a spot outside the Bone Palace. He smiled and said, All right, he is here. Just wait and see. I think he is more suitable to be the witch father than I. Everyone, follow me to welcome Taoist witch. What? There's a witch who is more powerful than Taoist? Jianji was stunned. When he heard Xiao Hua say that the witch had arrived, he was even more surprised. Ruo Bu, Ji Xiu, and the other Grand Magi could not follow Xiao Hua's train of thought. They stood there in a daze. Let's go. Xiao Hua took a few steps forward, then turned his head and said unhappily, This Taoist, which is an expert from Wuming Mountain Range. It seems like he has the same origin as all the soul cultivators in Ming Mountains. If he is willing to help, you will no longer have to worry about being a witch king. Jinji smiled wryly and said, Taoist, we know your background and trust you, but the others. It doesn't matter. Just follow me to meet this fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua smiled and said, He might not agree to help anyway. All right. Jinji and the others nodded helplessly and followed Xiao Hua out of the Bone Palace. In the entire Ming Mountains, aside from the clear sky within 10,000 miles of Hodu's stronghold, everywhere else was still covered by dark clouds, and no sunlight could be seen. The dark clouds that covered the entire sky were like huge soul beasts, slowly devouring the sunlight and the clear sky. Roar! Just as Xiao Hua brought all the Grand Magi and stood still outside the palace, they heard a roar that sounded like the roar of a dragon coming from the depths of Ming Mountains. In just a brief moment, the roar had reached the vicinity of Hodu's stronghold. Jinji and the others quickly looked over and saw a towering witch divinity stepping on a green cloud, whistling toward them. Perhaps Taoist witch's appearance was not as shocking as Xiao Hua's, but as he was born from the witch divinity, he did not need to use any divine ability. Just by standing in midair, he seemed to have gathered the aura of all the soul cultivators in Ming Mountains into his body. Furthermore, when Taoist witch revealed himself, all the elders of Ming Mountains had their eyes fixed on him. They couldn't see his face clearly under the dark green lightning threads and the strange-looking crown on his head. Without any hesitation, they all knelt down and cried out, Millions of people of Ming Mountains greet the witch sovereign. Xiao Hua frowned. He was very puzzled, because he had never heard of the title of Shaman Emperor. Taoist priest Wu's body didn't shrink much when he landed on the ground. He waved his hand and helped all the Taoist elders up. He said with a thunderous voice, "Get up. There's no such thing as a Shaman Emperor in my soul cultivation legacy. It's all because some ordinary people have confused the term soul cultivator with the term of the secular world. Just call me Taoist Witch." Junior doesn't dare. When Jianji and the others saw that Taoist Witch's aura was even more powerful than Xiao Hua's, they didn't dare to call him Taoist Witch. "Greetings, fellow Taoist." Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, "I wonder if fellow Taoist can find the traces of the 12 great gods." "Sure, fellow Taoist knows." Taoist priest Wu answered casually, "I just started a search. I only found out that my Wuming mountain range is the same as the Million Meng mountain range. Also, it seems like the Million Meng mountain range is more prosperous in soul cultivation." I was delighted, but I encountered the change of my soul cultivator's witch luck. That's why I hurried back. From what I know, the Shaman King that I have never met must have passed away and returned to the embrace of Hoodoo, great god. Sigh, what a pity. If it wasn't for that sealed space, I could still meet the Shaman King here. If Taoist priest Wu said that he had met the Shaman King, or even passed down the Shaman King's message, Jianji and the others might not know. They would definitely be suspicious. On the contrary, Taoist priest Wu said that he had never met the Shaman King and said that he regretted it, which made Jianji and the others even less suspicious. At this point, Taoist priest Wu asked, even though he already knew the answer, "Oh, by the way, where's the new Shaman King? Has he been sent to the Yilan continent, like fellow Taoists said?" Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. "I don't know about that. After all, these things were done by the Shaman King after we left. However, fellow Taoist, the old Shaman King has passed away, and the new Shaman King has yet to appear. There's no Shaman King in Million Meng Mountains, and the Shaman Elders are not confident. Just now, they wanted to ask I to be the Shaman Father. You know, although I know soul cultivation, I'm still a Taoist cultivator, and I can't be the Shaman Father. I just thought a fellow Taoist, and here you are. What? Fellow Taoist, you want to be the Shaman Father of the new Shaman King in Million Meng Mountains?" Taoist priest Wu pointed at his nose and said in surprise, "Don't forget that I am the Shaman Father of Wuming Mountain Range." "Yes." Xiao Hua smiled. "Didn't you say just now? Wuming Mountain Range and Million Meng Mountains share the same origin, and there's no need to distinguish between them. Isn't it the same for you to be the Shaman Father of Wuming Mountain Range and Million Meng Mountains?" "Fellow Taoist, you are wrong." Taoist priest Wu shook his head and said, "I haven't seen the new Shaman King, and I don't have any blood ties with the new Shaman King. How can I be the Shaman Father of the new Shaman King? We humans have the title of Godfather. I wonder if soul cultivators can use it as a reference?" Xiao Hua still tried to persuade him. Taoist priest Wu shook his head again. "I came to the Lost Land for 2 reasons. First, I want to find the difference between Million Meng Mountains and Wuming Mountain Range, and find the origin of the 12 great gods. Second, I want to help fellow Taoist Xiao break the immortal formation. There are billions of living beings in the 3 continents, so let's not talk about the Shaman Father of Million Meng Mountains." Xiao Hua and Taoist priest Wu were answering their own questions, and they didn't discuss it with Jianji and the others, but Jianji and the others understood. Everyone was like that. If Taoist priest Wu wanted to be the Shaman Elder, Jianji and the others might not agree. Even if Taoist priest Wu had an extraordinary background and was the legendary Shaman Emperor of Million Meng Mountains. However, Taoist priest Wu didn't agree, and Jianji and the others were a little moved. They looked at each other and talked to each other through telepathy. Jianji stepped forward and said, "Senior, please listen to me." Taoist priest Wu smiled. "You don't have to say much. I was already exhausted in Wuming Mountain Range. Wouldn't it be even more tiring to go to Million Meng Mountains? I still want to comprehend the will of the great god and return to the great god's embrace as soon as possible." "That's a good idea, fellow Taoist," Xiao Hua said meaningfully. "However, you're going to be disappointed. The shaman elders have just told me that Million Ming Mountains don't have a passage similar to our Dao sects. It can't be. Taoist priest Wu looked worried, and he said in disbelief, Million Ming Mountains is the birthplace of soul cultivators. How can it be? Senior, Jinji hurriedly said. As far as I know, Million Ming Mountains don't have such records. But whether it exists or not, it depends on the shaman king. The problem is, Taoist priest Wu shook his head. The shaman kings of Million Ming Mountains have returned to the great god Hutu's embrace, but the new shaman king hasn't returned yet. So, Jinji smiled and said, Senior can wait for the new shaman king to be born in Million Ming Mountains. Well, Taoist priest Wu hesitated, and he looked at Wuming Mountain Range. Xiao Hua took the opportunity and said, Fellow Taoist, you've already arranged everything in Wuming Mountain Range. Moreover, there's a sealed space between Wuming Mountain Range and Million Ming Mountains. It's not realistic for you to return to Wuming Mountain Range. Why don't you stay in Million Ming Mountains for now? We'll talk about it later. Of course, Taoist priest Wu wouldn't agree immediately. He waved his hand and said, I'll help you break the immortal formation first. Hee, that's the only way. Xiao Hua saw that he couldn't persuade Taoist priest Wu. So he turned to Jinji and the others and said, I can't do anything if this fellow Taoist doesn't agree. However, think about it. Isn't he more suitable than I? Moreover, he's more realistic? Yes. Jinji hurriedly nodded. Senior, please think about this. We, the shamans of the 12 shaman villages, also need to discuss this. After all, it's against the ancestral rules to ask a shaman who has no relationship with the new shaman king to be the shaman father. Reverend, what's the immortal formation that senior shaman emperor mentioned? Jinji of the Rushu village asked in a low voice. Well, Xiao Hua hesitated. After all, even the shaman kings didn't know about the immortal formation. How could these shamans know? But in the end, Xiao Hua still had the idea of working together and told all the Grand Magi about the immortal formation. In the end, he said, I've already asked the Grand Magus, but he doesn't know much about it. I think there is no record of it in the millions of Ming Mountains. Of course, if you have any clues about it, feel free to tell I. After all, there are hundreds of millions of lives in the 3 continents waiting to be saved. The shamans discussed in low voices, but no one spoke. Xiao Hua didn't find it strange. But just as he was about to speak, Jinji of the Rushu village said with embarrassment, Reverend, Senior Shaman Emperor, this junior usually likes to read shaman books, bones, and other things. What Senior said, this junior seems to have some impression. However, it's been too long, and this junior can't remember clearly what it is. When this junior returns to the Rushu village, if I find anything, I'll definitely inform Senior. Thank you for your trouble. Xiao Hua smiled and replied. However, he also knew how old the shaman of the Rushu village was. He couldn't even remember what the shaman was, so he didn't dare to place too much hope on him. Since the shaman of the Rushu village had spoken, the other shamans also expressed that they would go back and look carefully. Fellow Taoist priest Wu looked around and asked, Where's Zai? Zai? Hearing this, Jinji's heart skipped a beat, as if he had an inexplicable premonition. Xiao Hua smiled and said, I just arrived at the Hutu village, and I haven't mentioned this to Jinji yet. Fellow Taoist, you must do what you promised Zimming. Taoist priest Wu said. Xiao Hua nodded, took out a soul tool from his bosom, and handed it to Jinji. Shaman, this is the nether passage mirror that I damaged in the Hutu palace in the Hutu village. I have already repaired it, and now it's returned to you in perfect condition, which can be considered as fulfilling one of I's wishes. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 50-55. Seeing Mo Lianxi's appearance, Xiao Hua couldn't help but think of his youth before he entered the nascent soul stage. His impression of Mo Lianxi was very good. He raised his hand and said with a smile, "Sect Master Mo, please." Mo Lianxi nodded. Her figure was like lightning as she flew towards the end of the rainbow bridge. Xiaohua also urged his figure to follow behind. As they flew closer, Xiaohua could clearly see that on the other side of the rainbow bridge was a huge palace. Not only did it cover the entire mountain, even the 7 mountain ridges were under it. Moreover, this palace was in the shape of a flower. The flower had 7 petals, each corresponding to the 7 mountain ridges. Even the color of the petals corresponded to the mountain ridges. Where Xiao Hua's gaze landed, the 7-colored palace had a kind of feeling as if it was about to fly away, like a flower swaying in the wind. As Mo Lianxi landed, in the center of the flower, in front of a huge palace, there were several women in colorful clothes standing gracefully. When these female disciples saw Xiao Hua, they immediately bowed and saluted. They called out, "Junior greets Taoist Master Xiao, Sweat." Seeing the peerless beauty of these female disciples, Xiao Hua's heart slightly twitched. He hurriedly waved his hand and helped the girls up. He smiled and said, "All of you rise." "Huh?" Mo Lianxi laughed loudly and said, "Taoist Xiao is indeed a person with a temperament. This little one also hates those complicated formalities. It's really boring. It's better to have a few flower-like girls to accompany you and admire the flowers under the moon." Xiao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He waved his hand and said, "Sect Master Mo's words are a bit inappropriate, right? Complicated formalities and admiring the flowers under the moon have nothing to do with it." "Hee, that's what I meant." Mo Lianxi didn't care about the meaning of Xiao Hua's words. She pointed at the 2 female disciples and said, "You too, serve Taoist Xiao well. Otherwise, I'll hold you responsible." "Yes." The 2 women were beautiful, fat, and thin. They answered and immediately walked over. They held Xiao Hua's arms on both sides. Their softness and warmth immediately stuck to him. The admiration in their eyes didn't seem to be fake. They respectfully said, "Spiritual Master, please." Not only did the 2 female disciples have delicate and pretty faces, their temperaments were even more refined, and there was no foxy charm in their eyes. However, Xiao Hua had not been close to women for tens of thousands of years. Although his Tao heart was firm, he did not cultivate the virgin cultivation technique. As soon as he came into contact with these fleshy bodies, he immediately felt his heart become somewhat noisy, as if 10,000 small gongs were being struck. Damn it! Xiao Hua hurriedly activated his heart technique and cursed inwardly. He knew that he was injured, and it was the Devil Emperor who injured him. His willpower was not enough. Since he knew that he couldn't resist, Xiao Hua simply didn't pretend to be an expert. He raised his hand and waved it. "Sect Leader Mo, quickly let your 2 female disciples leave. I have been severely injured from the battle with the 2 demon emperors, and I have been suppressing my injuries all this time. Now that I can't resist this kind of temptation, if I do anything inappropriate, I'm afraid it won't be good for either of us." Mo Lianxi's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. He naturally knew what happened at the Misty School. He had also hypothesized that Xiao Hua would decline with a few excuses, and even assumed that Xiao Hua would not decline. However, he didn't expect that Xiao Hua, who was in the Tao actualization realm, would actually so frankly admit that he couldn't resist the temptation of women. Mo Lianxi smiled. "Spiritual Master Xiao, don't think too much. The female disciples of the fragrance cult are all top-quality cauldrons." At the same time, Spiritual Master Xiao chased away the 2 demon emperors who attacked the Misty School. "Not only did you save the Misty School, you also saved the ruins. The female disciples of the fragrance cult are very willing to offer their hearts for Spiritual Master Xiao's recovery. Spiritual Master, don't worry, they are all sincere." "Yes, Spiritual Master Xiao." The 2 beautiful disciples beside him said sincerely, "Senior has done so much for the ruins. Junior is willing to offer our lives to Spiritual Master, as long as we can help Spiritual Master recover as soon as possible." So that's how it is. Xiao Hua finally understood. He thought that Mo Lianxi of the fragrance cult was probing and trying to rope him in, but he didn't expect there to be such a layer of true meaning. Since that was the case, Xiao Hua couldn't accept it even more. He gently pulled his arm out of the embrace of the two female disciples. His movements were so careful and gentle, as if he was afraid of touching fragile porcelain. When the two female disciples saw Xiao Hua like this, their faces were full of disappointment. However, the luster in their eyes became even brighter, and their arms also loosened. Xiao Hua pulled his arm out and cupped his hands. Sect Master Mo, this Xiao understands your intentions. However, if this Zhao's injuries were to spoil the chastity of these two female disciples, this Zhao's heart will not be at ease even if this Zhao's strength increases greatly. Chastity? What is chastity? Mo Lianxi was slightly stunned and asked back. Xiao Hua sweated profusely. Chastity was the concept of Confucian cultivators. The ruins was a corner of the cultivation world. Although Mo Lianxi was the sect master of the fragrance cult, he probably hadn't heard of chastity before, right? However, since that was the case, Xiao Hua also understood that this misty school in the ruins was definitely not the misty school he was looking for. After thinking for a while, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "There's no need to elaborate on what chastity is. Sect Master, Mo only needs to know that it's the hardest to bear the grace of a beauty. This Xiao has received the grace of a beauty, and I'm afraid that I won't be able to repay it. Since that's the case, it's better not to touch it. What repayment or no repayment? They were all willing to do this. There's no need for any repayment." Mo Lianxi said disdainfully. "If Taoist won't damage his Tao foundation by plucking yin to replenish yang, then feel free to try my fragrance cult's secret technique. You have to know, who knows how many disciples of sects in the ruins have come to beg me, willing to tie the knot with the female disciples of my fragrance cult." In an instant, Xiao Hua suddenly understood why Yu Mingxin treated him like that. He smiled bitterly, and then said seriously, "Sect Master Mo, people with different paths cannot make plans together. This old man didn't come for this matter." Good. Mo Lianxi smiled and pushed the female disciple in her arms out and said, "People often say that guests should follow the host's wishes. Today, I can only follow the host's wishes." "Very good." Xiao Hua clapped and said with a smile, "Sect Master Mo, please find a secluded hall. I have something important to discuss with Sect Master." Don't be anxious, Taoist Xiao." Mo Lianxi's eyes narrowed slightly again and said with a smile, "I have already sent disciples to find Yu Mingxin. Taking advantage of this time, I will introduce a few elders of my sect to Taoist. I also have something important to discuss with Taoist." Xiao Hua's eyelids twitched, and he said somewhat helplessly, "Sect Master Mo, when this Xiao came to spread the fragrance cult, I already saw Yang Haoya who was with Yu Mingxin. If this Xiao came for my own personal matters, why would I come to spread the fragrance cult? Wouldn't it be better to directly find Yu Mingxin? Sect Master Mo, if this is the case, wouldn't this Xiao be in trouble again?" So Taoist Xiao didn't come for the important matter of Yu Mingxin. Mo Lianxi answered in a daze. However, this daze was clearly not one of sudden enlightenment. Seeing this, Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He stared at Mo Lianxi for a few breaths of time before saying word by word, "Sect Head Mo, what do you mean by this? Could it be that if I didn't come for Yu Mingxin, I can't come to spread the fragrance cult? Or, Sect Master Mo already knew that this Xiao would definitely come to spread the fragrance cult, and you are testing the Xiao?" Sigh. A trace of gloominess appeared on Mo Lianxi's face. She nodded slightly and sighed. "This one naturally knew that Taoist Xiao would come, and I knew it when I heard Taoist Xiao's name. This one hopes that I heard wrong, and that Taoist Xiao isn't that person. Unfortunately, Taoist Xiao still came. Although this one doesn't know what Taoist Xiao has brought, this one..." At this point, Mo Lianxi stopped, looked at the few female disciples on the left, and waved her hand. "You all can leave." "Yes, Sect Master." The few female disciples bowed and left. Among them, 2 of them looked at Xiao Hua reluctantly. After the few female disciples left, Lianqi said, "Let's go Taoist, Xiao. Let's go to Bright Palace and tell this one. What is the important matter that is enough to make me exterminate the fragrance cult?" Lianqi lifted her foot, but Xiao Hua was shocked. The premonition from before was born again, and he asked in a low voice, "Sect Master Imo, you already knew that this Xiao was going to bring you the news of exterminating the fragrance cult?" "Yes." Lianqi's figure slightly paused, and then she turned to look at Xiao Hua and answered with certainty, "Otherwise, why would this one leave such an order to the disciples?" "How did you know?" Xiao Hua followed, still somewhat confused. Lianqi forced a smile. "Once Taoist Xiao enters Bright Palace, you will naturally know." When Xiao Hua followed Lianqi in a Bright Palace, he saw that it was a huge hall. The 4 walls were painted with pictures of the desolate era. These pictures were different from the ones Xiao Hua had seen before. Aside from giants, mountains, floods, and monsters, there were also many fragments. These fragments seemed to be a whole, and many of the edges were the same. Of course, these fragments were not only scattered within a certain picture, but also scattered between different pictures. Moreover, there were obscure fluctuations emanating from within these fragments. Everywhere Xiao Hua's eyes looked at, the fragments emanated a strange and variegated brilliance, and Xiao Hua was actually able to see stars, regions, continents, and so on and so forth through these lights. Xiao Hua frowned, and then his gaze fell on other parts of the picture. The things on these pictures seemed to be engraved on them. Aside from the fluctuations in the fragments, there was also the ubiquitous aura on the pictures. This aura varied according to the things engraved on them. If all these auras were connected together, it would give off a strange feeling of covering and drowning. After looking at the pictures around Bright Palace, Xiao Hua's gaze fell on the main hall. There were a few brocade chairs there, and now several young cultivators were sitting on them. When they saw Xiao Hua and Lianqi enter, they all stood up to welcome them. When everyone came closer, Lianqi stopped and smiled at Xiao Hua. "Taoist Xiao, these are the elders of my Romance sect. I, Changmin, greet Taoist Xiao." A white-clothed scholar with curved eyebrows smiled and cupped his hands. Then a green-clothed, middle-aged cultivator with a somewhat yellow face cupped his hands. "I, Wu Hong, greet Taoist Xiao." The other was a burly man with a big waist and beard. His voice was also loud and clear. He cupped his hands and shouted, "I, Bai Jianzhong, greet Taoist Xiao. Fellow Taoists, please rise." Xiao Hua hurriedly raised his hand to help everyone up and said with a smile, "I, Xiao Hua, greet fellow Taoists. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, gift it, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 5056. Just as Blackhound opened its mouth, the soul strand between Xiao Hua's brows turned into 3 big hands and fell into Blackhound's body. However, out of Xiao Hua's expectation, after a while, when the 3 big hands retracted, not a single soul was taken out. "Humph." Xiao Hua snorted and opened his illusion breaker Dharma eye. A fist-sized silver light beam spun and fell into Blackhound's mouth. However, even though the silver light was rotating, there was no soul flying out. After half a cup of tea's worth of time, Xiao Hua had no choice but to close his illusion breaker eye. Taoist which frowned and said, "Fellow cultivator, there must be souls in the soul lamp. I have seen it. Why can't you do it?" Xiao Hua thought for a while and replied, "Fellow cultivator Taoist which can see it, I can sense it too. However, these souls are invisible and can't be taken out by eye. It's like the space in the soul lamp is not on the Dawn Rain continent." "Ha, that must be it." Taoist which laughed. "The space in the soul lamp should be part of the unholy blood sea. All the souls that are sucked in by the soul lamp have already fallen into the unholy blood sea. However, These souls haven't entered the reincarnation cycle. Instead, they became part of the soul lamp and strengthened its power. Senior, Jinji, who had been watching from afar, heard this, and his expression changed slightly. Jinji was the elder witch of Hutu village. How could he not know about the power of the unholy blood sea? He couldn't help but worry. Is it possible? While Jinji was asking, Ji Ming and the other elders also looked hopeful. The unholy blood sea was created by Hutu god, and there was also the unholy blood sea under the Hutu village's Yellow Spring Palace. However, they knew that the unholy blood sea might be the real unholy blood sea, but it was definitely not the real unholy blood sea in the legends. It was most likely a fragment of the blood sea's space. However, since the space in the soul lamp was connected to the unholy blood sea, it had already surpassed the limit of the soul cultivators in Million Meng Mountain. In the records of Million Meng Mountain Shaman Codex, there was no shaman king who had such a technique. Ha! Xiao Hua smiled and said to Jinji, Elder Witch, don't worry. As long as Zai's soul is still in the soul lamp, I can take his soul out. Saying this, Xiao Hua slightly raised his hand, and the clear water bottle appeared in his hand. This is? Seeing Xiao Hua take out a bottle with a willow branch inside, Jinji was stunned. It was not the spirit treasure he thought it was. Jinji's soul sense naturally landed on the clear water bottle and the willow branch. The clear water bottle had traces of being a Buddhist item, but the willow branch was no different from a normal willow branch. Could it be that Taoist Xiao wants to use this bottle? Jinji's gaze landed on the clear water bottle. However, Xiao Hua's actions were out of everyone's expectations. Xiao Hua gently extended his right hand and used his thumb and index finger to pick up the willow branch. He looked at Ziye's body and then looked at the soul-losing lamp. Swoosh! A 10-colored, multicolored radiance that was invisible to everyone, but was exceptionally clear, and Xiao Hua's eyes rushed out from the willow branch and landed precisely on the soul-falling lamp. Under Jinji and the hundreds of shamans' astonishment, the three-headed black hound's body suddenly split open. A small rainbow bridge was placed between Ziye's body and the three-headed black hound's stomach. On the rainbow bridge, 10 colors flowed rapidly like rainwater. The green light of the soul-falling lamp appeared dim in the midst of the 10 colors on the rainbow bridge. An indescribable warmth was born from the bottom of everyone's heart. Z. Just as everyone's heart was filled with warmth, they saw a soul standing on top of the rainbow bridge with its eyes closed, along with the 10 colors flowing out. Jinji couldn't help but cry out. This was because he couldn't see the rainbow bridge, nor could he see the 10 colors. He also couldn't see the soul power or magic power of Xiao Hua's divine ability. Xiao Hua had a smile on his face. He held the Permitha in one hand and quietly waited for Ziye's soul to pass through the rainbow bridge and enter his body. Then, he gently shook his hand and retrieved the Permitha. He inserted it back into the clear water bottle and sent it back to his Niwen palace. The rainbow bridge disappeared, and the three-headed black hound's body slowly returned to its original form. When Xiao Hua retrieved the soul strands, the soul-falling lamp also returned to its original form. However, the soul-falling lamp's flame was a little dim now. The color wasn't emerald green, it was actually a little mixed. Xiao Hua opened his mouth, and a few more green seal words appeared. Just as he was about to spit them out, he closed his mouth again and raised his hand to point at the soul-falling lamp. The soul-falling lamp slowly flew to Jinji's eyes. Xiao Hua said, "I'm sorry, Elder Wu. Your soul-falling lamp is a little damaged. However, you don't seem to have complete control over the soul-falling lamp. Now is a good opportunity. In the bone that I gave you, there's a secret technique to refine soul treasures. You can take this opportunity to refine the soul-falling lamp." Okay. Jinji nodded excitedly and kept the soul-falling lamp. He said, "Senior, quickly revive Ziyi. This junior will then refine the soul-falling lamp." This is easy to say, but it's also troublesome. Xiaohua looked at Taoist Wu and cupped his hands. I'll have to trouble you next. Haha, it's troublesome for Taoist Xiao, but it's simple for I. As Taoist Wu spoke, he also showed off. He took out the brush, and under the urging of his soul power, a strong life force was produced from the tip of the brush. It was really like adding the finishing touch to a dragon and landing on the space between Ziye's eyebrows. In an instant, the entire world fell silent. Even the whistling wind stopped. Pa! The brush touched the space between Ziye's eyebrows. A sound like a sprout breaking out of the ground came from nowhere. It could be the sky, the earth, the space between Ziye's eyebrows, the brush, or even the hope of everyone. Following this sound, swoosh. Thousands of light shadows surged out from Taoist Wu's body and rushed between heaven and earth. Gusts of hurricanes suddenly appeared in the sky. Rumble. At the same time, deep in the ground, there was also a rumbling sound, and the earth shook. Ka, ka, ka. Several thick lightning bolts also struck out from the void. It was like a punishment flashing above the Hutu stronghold. However, after a while, Zi still lay there quietly and didn't move at all. Xiaohua frowned slightly. When he looked through the soul bridge again, he saw that the mysterious dark clouds had already produced a faint life force. However, this life force was like a seed that was sprouting. Although the life force was strong, it was still lacking like a spring breeze. I see. A thought flashed through Xiaohua's mind. Then, a trace of confidence appeared on his face. He quietly opened his mouth, and the refined Xiantian Qi in his middle dantian was slightly activated. Pooh! The life force that had been refined for tens of thousands of years entered Ziye's soul. Poo-pu! Countless silent sounds rang out from various parts of the mysterious dark clouds. Swoosh, swoosh. The solidified dark clouds began to move. Elder sister, dodge. Amidst the rumbling thunder, Ziye's panicked voice came out of his mouth. His arms and legs that had been motionless for hundreds of years suddenly began to move, just like Ziyi, who had blocked Ziming's path that day. Unfortunately, Zi hadn't moved for hundreds of years. He struggled a few times but didn't get up. However, on his pale face, a pair of eyes that Xiaohua was familiar with opened. Ziya's eyes opened first. A pair of pitch-black eyes flashed before they closed again. Zi called out in panic, "Elder sister, where are you? Why is it so bright here?" Zi. Jinji flew to Ziye's side and reached out to hold his hand. He said kindly, "Don't be afraid. With this old man here, the soul-falling lamp can't hurt you, and Ziming, Elder Wu, you're back?" Zi was very familiar with Jinji's voice. He actually panicked a little and said, Elder sister and I just wanted to help you light the soul-falling lamp. This was all my idea. Please don't punish Elder sister." Hee, good child," Jinji laughed and said, "You and Ziming are both good children. Why would this old man blame you? You're tired. Sleep for a while." "Okay, Elder," Zi said. He was also tired and really fell asleep. "Senior." Without waiting for Xiaohua to speak, Jinji hurriedly explained. Ziya's soul left his body for too long. When he came out of the soul-falling lamp, this junior felt that his soul had dissipated a lot. Now that he entered his body, he wasn't used to it. After he recovers, this junior will bring him to thank senior for saving his life. As Jinji explained, the group of elders didn't speak. The Bone Palace was completely silent. This was a real miracle that they had never heard of. They really didn't know how to express the shock and surprise in their hearts. Dao is Xiao, Dao is Xiao. At this moment, at the foot of the mountain in the distance, a white-haired old woman flew over and shouted loudly, "You're back? Can you really revive Zi? G-Man?" Xiaohua recognized this old woman at a glance. Wasn't she G-Man of the backer stronghold? Qing Hong. Jinji frowned and scolded in a low voice. "Why are you here? Today is the God-praying ceremony. Even if you're a G-Man, you can't barge into the Bone Palace without permission." Elder Wu, the former G-Man of the backer stronghold, begged, "I just want to ask, can Daoist Xiao really revive Zi?" Jinji thought for a while, raised his hand and pointed at Ziyi. It's not a matter of whether or not you can. Ziyi has already been revived. Jinji looked at Ziyi's body in disbelief. Seeing Ziyi's nose moving slightly and his eyelashes trembling, he didn't need to get close to know that everything Jinji said was true. She couldn't help but cry. She threw herself in front of Xiao Hua and kowtowed. Dao is Xiao, please pity me. Back then, I didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and offended you. I deserve to die. I will die immediately. However, that Ziyin of mine is innocent. Can you save him? P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank all forms of support. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.